It was an astonishing vision of a completely unknown world, a world that had existed since the beginning of time. All sorts of things that you've no idea ever existed, all in a multitude of colours, all unbelievably beautiful.
The conquest of land was neither sudden nor simple. It unfolded step by step as different groups of algae gradually adapted to terrestrial environments. The earliest land-dwelling photosynthetic organisms were likely microbial mats of cyanobacteria and simple algae that formed thin films on moist rocks. These primitive colonizers survived where waves splashed coastal rocks or where tide pools evaporated and refilled. They could withstand drying for limited periods, anchoring themselves to sediment and rock surfaces and altering the landscape for the first time. The ancestors of true land plants were green algae, specifically a group known as charophytes. These algae lived in shallow freshwater environments where fluctuating water levels created conditions that favored survival during occasional drying. Over millions of years, charophyte-like organisms accumulated adaptations that made the transition to land possible. These included protective structures to prevent desiccation, reproductive strategies that did not rely on open water, and simple mechanisms for nutrient uptake from substrates rather than surrounding water. The earliest terrestrial plants appeared around 470 million years ago. They were tiny, soft, and simple, far from the towering forests that would come later. These early plants resembled modern mosses and liverworts. They lacked true roots, stems, or leaves. Instead, they had flattened bodies only a few centimeters tall, spreading across damp surfaces along rivers, lakes, and coastlines. Their tissues could absorb water directly from the environment, but they were vulnerable to drying. Thus, these pioneer plants could survive only in consistently moist environments. Though small, these plants changed Earth profoundly. They trapped sediments with their bodies, reducing erosion. They stabilized soils along waterways. They began cycling nutrients on land through growth and decay. And most importantly, they initiated the long-term transformation of atmospheric carbon dioxide by performing photosynthesis on the continents for the first time. One of the major challenges for early plants was reproduction. In aquatic environments, gametes could simply drift through water. On land, reproduction required new strategies. Many of the earliest plants continued to rely on water for fertilization. Their sperm needed moisture to swim to eggs. This dependence limited their distribution, confining them to wet habitats. But it was a crucial early step in plant evolution. As the Devonian period began, plants evolved new structures that allowed them to grow taller, spread farther, and inhabit drier environments. The evolution of vascular tissue, specialized tubes for transporting water and nutrients, revolutionized plant life. These tubes, known as xylem and phloem, allowed plants to maintain internal water pressure and survive away from constant moisture. Vascular tissues also provided structural support, enabling plants to grow upright. The first vascular plants, such as Cooksonia, appeared around 430 million years ago. They were still small, only a few centimeters tall, with simple branching stems and no true leaves. Their sporangiosspore-producing structures sat atop their stems. Though these plants had limited size and complexity, their ability to stand upright represented a major evolutionary leap. They could capture more sunlight, disperse spores more widely, and access new ecological niches. As vascular plants diversified, They developed roots, specialized organs that anchored them into the soil and absorbed water and nutrients. Roots allowed plants to grow in more stable and predictable ways, colonizing areas beyond the reach of constant surface moisture. With roots came the ability to break down rock into soil more effectively. Roots penetrated cracks, secreted organic acids, and initiated chemical weathering on unprecedented scales. Continents began transforming beneath these pioneering forests of small vascular plants. Leaves evolved soon after. Early leaves were simple flaps of tissue that increased surface area for photosynthesis. Over millions of years, leaves became more complex, developing veins, cuticles, and stomata, tiny regulated pores that allowed gas exchange while minimizing water loss. With leaves, plants could capture sunlight more efficiently and produce more biomass. Landscapes grew greener and more productive. By the mid-Devonian, forests of primitive trees had begun to form. Early trees such as Archaeopteris and Cladoxylopsids evolved woody tissues that allowed them to grow tall, reaching heights of 10 meters or more. These trees had root systems that stabilized soils and influenced river systems. Their canopies altered climate by increasing transpiration, the release of water vapor from leaves into the atmosphere. Forests shaded the ground, cooled local climates, and created new ecological niches for animals and fungi. The development of spores and later seeds played central roles in the expansion of land plants. Spores, protected by resistant outer coatings, allowed plants to reproduce across greater distances. They could survive harsh conditions and remain dormant until moisture returned. But spores still required water at some stage of fertilization. Eventually, plants evolved seeds-resilient, nutrient-packed capsules that protected developing embryos and enabled reproduction independent of standing water. However, this would occur later in the Devonian and Carboniferous periods. The colonization of land by plants transformed Earth's atmosphere. As forests expanded, plants absorbed massive amounts of carbon dioxide during photosynthesis. This reduction in carbon dioxide contributed to long-term cooling trends. At the same time, plants released oxygen into the atmosphere, increasing concentrations and fueling the evolution of larger, more complex animals. The arrival of plants also reshaped the soil. Before plants, soils were thin or non-existent. Decomposing plant matter created organic rich layers that held water and nutrients. This enriched soil provided a foundation for future ecosystems, including the colonization of land by arthropods and eventually vertebrates. Fungi also played a crucial role in this process. Mycorrhizal fungi formed symbiotic relationships with early plants, helping them absorb nutrients in exchange for carbohydrates. These partnerships were essential for the success of terrestrial plants and remain fundamental to modern ecosystems. As plants spread across continents, they created the first terrestrial food webs. Fungi decomposed dead plant material. Detritivores fed on decaying tissues. Arthropods grazed on leaves and spores. Predators hunted these arthropods. For the first time, the land supported complex ecological interactions. Plants provided shelter, food, and stability to a world that had been barren for billions of years. The rise of land plants also influenced waterways. Roots stabilized riverbanks, reducing sediment erosion. This stability led to meandering river systems and the formation of floodplains. Plants slowed water flow, creating wetlands that supported new forms of life. As rivers evolved, so did the organisms that inhabited them. Fish and amphibious vertebrates found new habitats in swampy environments created by vegetation. By the late Devonian, land plants had become towering forest ecosystems. Lycophytes, horsetails, and early ferns dominated the landscape. Some lycophytes grew over 30 meters tall. These forests created deep shade, stratified habitats, and complex microclimates. The expansion of forests also contributed to one of Earth's most significant environmental transformations, a major drop in atmospheric carbon dioxide. This cooling may have contributed to Devonian glaciations and mass extinctions, illustrating the profound impact plants could have on global climate. Plants also altered nutrient cycles. They drew minerals from deep soils and released them through leaf litter, creating cycles that enriched upper soil layers. This nutrient flow fed fungi, arthropods, and early terrestrial vertebrates. The emergence of forests accelerated the weathering of rocks, which pulled carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and helped regulate Earth's climate over millions of years. As plant diversity increased, so did structural complexity. Some plants developed seeds, which protected embryos from desiccation and allowed plants to colonize drier environments. Gymnosperms' early seed plants appeared near the end of the Devonian. Their seeds allowed them to spread into uplands and more arid zones, further expanding the range of terrestrial ecosystems. Fungi evolved alongside plants, becoming major decomposers on land. Giant fungi such as prototaxites, towering structures several meters tall, dominated early terrestrial landscapes before being replaced by trees. Fungi formed essential symbiotic relationships and developed the ability to break down tough plant tissues like lignin. Without fungi, forests would have been buried under their own debris, and nutrient cycles would have stagnated. The colonization of land by plants did more than transform ecosystems. It transformed the entire planet. The air became richer in oxygen. Soils deepened. River systems changed form. Climate shifted. Continents turned green. New habitats emerged for arthropods, which would soon take their own tentative steps onto land. Amphibious vertebrates would follow, marking another profound evolutionary milestone. By the end of this chapter, the once barren continents had become living landscapes. From tiny moss like pioneers to giant Devonian forests, plants had reshaped the world in ways that would continue to influence life for hundreds of millions of years. The stage was now set for the next great leap in Earth's history, the arrival of animals onto land, an event that would forever change the planet's evolutionary trajectory. As plants transformed barren continents into lush green landscapes, a new opportunity emerged for life. For the first time in Earth's history, land offered food, shelter, and stable habitats. But leaving the water was no simple task. Oceans had been the cradle of life for billions of years. Water supported bodies, facilitated movement, protected delicate tissues, and provided oxygen-rich environments for gills. Land, in contrast, was harsh. Gravity pulled on unprotected bodies. Air dried out exposed tissues. Temperatures fluctuated dramatically, and oxygen had to be taken from the atmosphere rather than dissolved water. Yet, slowly, step by step, life began to crawl out of the oceans. The first land animals were small, fragile, and few, but they initiated one of the most important expansions in evolutionary history. Long before vertebrates ventured onto land, arthropods made the leap. Arthropods were well suited for terrestrial life. Their hard exoskeletons reduced water loss and provided structural support. Jointed legs allowed them to move efficiently on solid surfaces. Their bodies were already adapted to life at the interface of land and water, thanks to ancestors that lived in shallow seas, tidal flats, and near-shore environments. The earliest known terrestrial arthropods appeared around 440 million years ago, during the late Ordovician and early Silurian periods. These pioneering creatures likely resembled today's millipedes, centipedes, mites, and primitive insects. Many fed on decaying plant matter or microbial mats that grew on moist soils. Others were predators, hunting smaller arthropods or feeding on soft-bodied invertebrates. These early land animals helped create the first terrestrial food webs and accelerated the breakdown of plant material, enriching soils with nutrients. Millipede-like organisms were among the first true residents of land. Fossils such as Pneumodesmus from the Silurian period show clear evidence of spiracles, breathing holes used for air respiration, indicating genuine terrestrial adaptation. These creatures likely fed on detritus and plant fragments, establishing themselves as important decomposers. Centipede-like arthropods, equipped with venom claws and strong legs, became some of the earliest land predators. Agile and fast, they hunted smaller organisms in the leaf litter and along riverbanks. Their predatory lifestyles encouraged the evolution of defensive adaptations in prey species, sparking early terrestrial arms races. Insects also began their long evolutionary story during this time. Although the earliest insects may have lived in freshwater habitats, some early forms ventured onto land during the Devonian. Their bodies evolved waxy coatings to reduce water loss and tracheal systems to breathe air efficiently. Insects would eventually become the dominant animal group on land, but their true explosion would occur later, after the evolution of wings. Arachnids, the group that includes spiders, scorpions, and mites, were also early pioneers. Scorpion fossils from the Devonian display adaptations that allowed them to breathe air, suggesting they spent part of their time on land. Early spiders likely evolved from aquatic ancestors that spun silk for capturing prey or protecting eggs. Over time, spiders became agile terrestrial predators, using venom, webs, and stealth to dominate small prey. While arthropods spread across land with growing success, vertebrates lagged behind. Fish had dominated oceans for millions of years, but their bodies were not initially suited for terrestrial environments. Their gills collapsed in air. Their fins could not support weight. Their eyes dried out, and their diets were tied to aquatic food webs. Nevertheless, environmental pressures and opportunities pushed vertebrates toward the shoreline. The first steps toward terrestrial vertebrates began in shallow, swampy waters, where lobe-finned fish such as Eusthenopteron and Panderichthys evolved stronger, bone-supported fins. These fins were capable of bearing weight, allowing fish to push themselves along the bottom of muddy lakes and rivers. Living in environments prone to droughts or fluctuating water levels, some fish developed lungs derived from primitive air sacs. These organs allowed them to gulp air when oxygen levels in water became low, providing a tremendous advantage during environmental stress. Tiktaalik, often called a fishapod, represents one of the most iconic transitional forms, living around 375 million years ago. Tiktaalik possessed both fish-like and tetrapod-like features. It had fins with wrist-like bones, allowing it to support part of its weight. It had a flat skull with eyes on top, suitable for peering above water. It had a neck, a trait absent in fish, enabling its head to move independently of its body. Although not fully terrestrial, Tiktaalik could navigate shallow waters and mudflats, edging closer to life on land. True tetrapods, four-limbed vertebrates, emerged soon after. Early tetrapods, such as Acanthostega and Ichthyostega, still lived primarily in water, but had limbs capable of walking in shallow environments. Acanthostega had 8 fingers on each hand, and limbs suited more for paddling than walking. Ichthyostega, more robust, could haul itself onto land, but likely moved awkwardly. These early tetrapods were not fully terrestrial animals. Instead, they were amphibious, exploring the interface between water and land. The transition from water to land required numerous evolutionary innovations beyond limbs and lungs. Vertebrates needed stronger backbones and rib cages to support their bodies. They needed sensory adaptations to see and hear in air rather than water. They needed skin resistant to drying, though early tetrapods still relied heavily on moist environments. Their circulatory systems had to adapt to changes in pressure and oxygen intake. Each adaptation represented millions of years of gradual change. As vegetation spread across continents, new ecological opportunities emerged. Lush Devonian forests created shaded wetlands, swampy floodplains, and streams filled with leaf litter. These environments provided shelter, food, and breeding grounds for early amphibious vertebrates. Insects and other arthropods offered new food sources. Predators and prey established new interactions that drove further evolutionary refinement. By the late Devonian, tetrapods had diversified into various forms, occupying different ecological roles. Some hunted small arthropods along riverbanks. Others remained mostly aquatic, but used limbs to navigate dense vegetation. Vertebrate life on land remained limited, but the foundations for future expansion were firmly established. However, this era was also marked by significant environmental challenges. Late Devonian extinctions, likely driven by global cooling, ocean anoxia, and habitat loss from the spread of forests, affected both marine and freshwater ecosystems. Eggs that required moisture, amphibians spread across wetlands and forest floors. They fed on insects, worms, and other small animals, expanding terrestrial food webs further. Arthropods and tetrapods began shaping the land in ways that influenced global ecosystems. Burrowing animals aerated soil. Decomposers accelerated nutrient cycles. Predators and prey established dynamic interactions. The land, once lifeless, became a vibrant and complex biosphere. The colonization of land by animals also impacted Earth's climate and chemistry. Burrowing organisms increased soil turnover, spreading nutrients. Herbivorous arthropods fed on plants, influencing vegetation patterns. Early terrestrial predators introduced new ecological pressures, driving adaptation and diversification. Ecosystems grew more structured, feeding behaviors became more complex, and habitats diversified. As time progressed, vertebrates continued adapting to terrestrial life. Some developed more efficient lungs. Others evolved tougher skin. Limb structures became stronger and more refined. Eventually, the first amniotes, animals capable of laying eggs protected from desiccation, would emerge, freeing vertebrates from their dependence on water for reproduction. This leap would allow vertebrates to conquer drier environments, deserts, uplands, and open plains. But that development lies ahead. During the Devonian period, land animals were still pioneers, exploring a new frontier filled with challenges and opportunities. They were the first to leave footprints on ancient soils, the first to breathe air through lungs, the first to listen to the sounds of wind and rustling plants. Their arrival represented one of the most profound transitions in Earth's biological history. From the oceans to the forests, life had begun reshaping the continents with movement, behavior, and ambition. And soon, with the evolution of more advanced vertebrates, reptiles, and eventually dinosaurs, the land would become a stage for evolutionary dramas on a scale never before seen. After plants and animals first colonized the land, Earth entered a period of extraordinary ecological expansion. During the Carboniferous period, beginning around 359 million years ago, the continents transformed into lush landscapes filled with towering forests, sprawling swamps, and dense undergrowth. These forests created habitats teeming with life and dramatically altered the atmosphere. Insects, arthropods, and amphibians thrived in this world, some reaching gigantic sizes thanks to unusually high oxygen levels. The rise of giant forests and insects marked a unique chapter in Earth's history, one defined by immense biomass, evolutionary experimentation, and profound planetary transformation. The Carboniferous world was warm, humid, and rich in rainfall. Vast regions near the equator were covered in wetlands. Shallow seas, lagoons, and river systems meandered through continents blanketed by vegetation. The atmosphere contained high concentrations of oxygen, far higher than today, reaching levels of up to 35% at peak intervals. This oxygen-rich air created conditions that were both beneficial and challenging for life. One of the defining features of the Carboniferous was the development of enormous forests built by primitive trees. Unlike modern conifers or flowering trees, these ancient plants belonged to groups such as lycophytes, horsetails, and ferns. Lycophytes like lepidodendron towered over 30 meters high with thick, scaly trunks and crowns of narrow leaves. Sigillaria, another giant lycophyte, grew in straight columns with patterned bark. Horsetails of the genus Calamites grew in bamboo-like clusters, some reaching heights of 20 meters. Seed ferns, early relatives of modern seed plants, spread across forest floors and developed seeds long before flowering plants evolved. These forests created layered ecosystems. Towering trees formed dense canopies that filtered sunlight. Beneath them, smaller plants filled the understory, and beneath that, mosses, ferns, and fungi blanketed the ground. Swampy pools and muddy floor-beds supported a rich diversity of organisms. The dense vegetation trapped moisture, maintained humidity, and influenced weather patterns. These forests were not simply collections of trees, they were vast ecosystems shaping the atmosphere itself. One of the most significant biological consequences of these forests was the dramatic increase in atmospheric oxygen. Plants absorbed carbon dioxide and released oxygen through photosynthesis. Because the Carboniferous environment allowed rapid plant growth, more biomass accumulated than in earlier periods. Much of this biomass fell into swampy environments where oxygen was scarce, slowing decomposition. As dead plant material piled up and resisted decay, carbon became locked away in sediments. This process removed carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and stored it underground as peat, which over millions of years would transform into coal. The carbon sequestration allowed oxygen levels to continue rising. The high oxygen levels had profound effects on animals, particularly insects and other arthropods. Because insects rely on passive diffusion for breathing, using tracheal tubes rather than lungs,
Is that no one
increased
is
oxygen
Urbex or
allowed them to grow larger than modern atmospheric conditions would permit. Dragonfly, like insects such as Meganeura, with wingspans of over 70 centimeters, soared through the air. Giant millipede like arthropods known as Arthropleura reached lengths of more than 2 meters, roaming forest floors as herbivores or detritivores. Enormous scorpions and spiders inhabited the leaf litter, hunting small prey. These giant arthropods dominated terrestrial ecosystems. Their size gave them advantages in competition and predation. They filled ecological niches left vacant by the absence of large terrestrial vertebrates, which had not yet evolved to dominate land. Though amphibians existed, they were still tied to water for reproduction and lacked the adaptations needed to thrive in dry environments. Thus, insects and arthropods became the rulers of the Carboniferous forests. The oxygen-rich atmosphere also influenced fire. While the forests were humid, periods of drying could trigger widespread wildfires. High oxygen made these fires burn intensely, shaping forest turnover and opening new ecological opportunities. Burned forests created space for new plant growth and cycles of ecological succession, promoting biodiversity. The Carboniferous also saw the rise of advanced amphibians. Amphibians had emerged earlier from lobe-finned fish ancestors, but during this period they diversified into numerous shapes and sizes. Some amphibians resembled modern salamanders or crocodiles, inhabiting swampy waters and preying on insects and small vertebrates. Others developed heavily armored bodies or elongated limbs for navigating dense vegetation. However, despite their diversity, amphibians remained largely dependent on moist environments due to their permeable skin and reproductive needs. One of the most significant evolutionary milestones of the Carboniferous was the emergence of amniotes, the group that would eventually give rise to reptiles, birds, and mammals. Amniotes evolved eggs with protective membranes and shells, allowing embryos to develop on land without drying out. This innovation freed early reptiles from reliance on water for reproduction, giving them access to drier environments that amphibians could not inhabit. Early amniotes were small and lizard-like, feeding on insects and avoiding larger predators, but their evolutionary potential was enormous. Their skin prevented moisture loss more effectively than amphibians. Their limb structure supported efficient terrestrial locomotion. Amniotic eggs allowed them to spread across forests and uplands. Though small and inconspicuous, these reptiles would eventually give rise to some of the most dominant groups in Earth's history, including the dinosaurs. In parallel with these evolutionary developments, Earth's landscapes continued transforming. Roots of giant trees stabilized soils, altering erosion patterns. Waterways filled with plant debris, creating peat-rich swamps. Fungal decomposers evolved enzymes capable of breaking down lignin, the tough substance that strengthened plant cell walls. Before these fungi evolved, plant debris accumulated in enormous quantities, contributing to the formation of coal deposits. The interactions between plants, fungi, arthropods, and amphibians formed intricate food webs. Herbivorous insects fed on leaves, stems, and spores. Fungi decomposed fallen trees and leaf litter. Predators hunted across the canopy, forest floor, and swamp waters. Ecosystems became more complex than at any previous time in Earth's history. Climate also played a major role. During the Carboniferous, Earth experienced periods of glaciation, especially in the southern hemisphere. Fluctuating sea levels created cycles of swamp expansion and contraction. When seas retreated, forests grew across coastal plains. When seas advanced, these forests drowned, creating thick layers of organic-rich mud. These cycles contributed to the extensive coal seams found today in many parts of the world. The rise of forests also affected global temperatures. As plants removed carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, the greenhouse effect weakened, contributing to global cooling. Ice sheets expanded, particularly across the ancient continent of Gondwana. This cooling climate eventually led to the collapse of some Carboniferous ecosystems. Toward the end of the period, environmental instability increased. Shifting climates caused forests to fragment. Drying conditions reduced swamp habitats. Giant arthropods, dependent on high oxygen and humid conditions, began to decline. Amphibians faced increasing competition from reptiles, which were better adapted to drier environments. The end of the Carboniferous marked a transition from swampy, oxygen-rich landscapes to more seasonal and arid climates. But during the height of the Carboniferous, Earth witnessed a unique moment of ecological grandeur. Forests towered over continents. Insects grew to unimaginable sizes. Amphibians spread widely across wetlands. Reptiles took their first steps toward evolutionary dominance. The atmosphere transformed, and vast coal deposits were laid down that would fuel human industry millions of years later. The rise of giant forests and insects reshaped Earth in ways that would influence all future life. It created the oxygen-rich atmosphere that allowed large animals to evolve. It established ecosystems with complex food webs and interactions. It prepared the stage for the next major evolutionary chapter, the rise of reptiles and the emergence of early amniotes that would eventually give rise to the magnificent age of dinosaurs. The world was green, humid, and filled with life of astonishing size and diversity. But as climates shifted and ecosystems changed, new opportunities emerged. And soon, evolution would move forward once again, guiding life toward an era dominated not by amphibians or arthropods, but by reptiles that would rule the land for the next hundreds of millions of years. As the Carboniferous period progressed and lush forests covered the continents, amphibians were among the dominant vertebrates on land. They thrived in the warm, humid swamps, feeding on abundant insects and laying their eggs in water-filled environments. But beneath this flourishing world, a quiet and revolutionary transformation was taking place. A new kind of vertebrate was emerging, one better suited for life away from swamps, one capable of reproducing on dry land, and one destined to reshape the planet's ecosystems. These were the early reptiles, the first amniotes, and their rise marked a turning point in Earth's history. To understand how amphibians gave way to reptiles, it is essential to recognize the limitations amphibians faced. Although amphibians were the first vertebrates to fully explore terrestrial habitats, they were deeply tied to water. Their eggs lacked protective shells, making them vulnerable to desiccation. Their skin was permeable, requiring moisture to prevent drying out. They needed damp environments for respiration, hydration, and reproduction. As long as Earth remained wet and swampy, amphibians prospered. But when environmental conditions shifted, their vulnerabilities became critical. In contrast, early reptiles evolved traits that freed them from these constraints. Their most important adaptation was the amniotic egg, a self-contained life support system equipped with membranes that provided protection, nourishment, and gas exchange. This innovation allowed embryos to develop on land without drying out. The leathery or partially calcified shell prevented water loss, while internal membranes created a controlled aquatic environment for the embryo. For the first time, vertebrates no longer needed water to reproduce. This single evolutionary leap opened vast new territories previously inaccessible to amphibians. The amniotic egg was only one part of the reptile's success. Early reptiles also developed tougher, more keratinized skin that reduced water loss. Unlike amphibians, whose skin absorbed water and oxygen, reptiles relied on lungs and minimized moisture loss through their outer layers. This made them far more resilient in dry conditions. Their limbs became stronger and more efficient for walking on land. Their senses adapted to detecting prey and predators in open terrestrial habitats, and their metabolism allowed them to survive in a wide range of environments. The earliest reptiles appeared during the late Carboniferous, around 315 million years ago. Fossils such as Hylonomus from the coal forests of Nova Scotia provide some of the oldest evidence of true reptiles. Hylonomus was small, lizard-like, and agile. It hunted insects and small arthropods in the leaf litter of dense forests. Its body plan already showed many reptilian traits: elongated limbs, strong vertebrae, and a skull with openings that allowed for more powerful jaw muscles. Early reptiles belonged to several distinct evolutionary branches. Some of the first were anapsids, reptiles with solid skulls lacking temporal openings. These early anapsids included ancestors of turtles and many extinct reptilian lineages. Another major group, the synapsids, evolved a single temporal opening behind each eye. This opening allowed for stronger bite forces and more advanced jaw muscles. Synapsids would eventually give rise to mammals, but in the late Carboniferous and Permian, they were some of the dominant terrestrial predators and herbivores. A third major lineage, the diapsids, evolved two temporal openings on each side of the skull, providing even greater flexibility and strength for jaw movement. Diapsids would eventually give rise to lizards, snakes, crocodiles, birds, and the dinosaurs. Although diapsids were not yet dominant in the late Carboniferous, their evolutionary potential was enormous. The rise of reptiles coincided with changes in climate and environment. During the late Carboniferous, Earth began experiencing increased seasonality, glaciations in the southern hemisphere, and fluctuations in sea levels. Swamp forests fragmented as periods of drying became more common. Amphibians, dependent on stable and humid environments, struggled in this shifting landscape. Many amphibian lineages declined as habitats shrank and became more isolated. Reptiles, however, were not as restricted. Their waterproof skin enabled them to move into upland regions, drier forests, and open plains. Their amniotic eggs allowed them to reproduce away from water sources. Their more robust bodies allowed them to navigate diverse terrains. As ecosystems changed, reptiles expanded into niches amphibians could not occupy. During the Permian period, reptiles diversified dramatically. Synapsids, in particular, became prominent. Early synapsids, like Dimetrodon, often mistaken for a dinosaur, were apex predators long before dinosaurs existed. Dimetrodon possessed a large sail on its back, possibly used for thermoregulation. Its powerful jaws and sharp teeth made it a formidable hunter. Other synapsids evolved herbivorous lifestyles, developing barrel-shaped bodies and grinding teeth for processing plant material. Diapsids also began their ascent during this time. Early diapsids evolved lighter, more flexible skeletons that allowed quick movement and agility. Some adapted to aquatic lifestyles. Others became swift terrestrial hunters. Though small at first, diapsids were laying the groundwork for future dominance. Reptiles were no longer limited to tiny insect hunters. They were evolving into predators, herbivores, climbers, and burrowing specialists. Amphibians continued to exist alongside early reptiles, but their diversity diminished as reptiles took over terrestrial ecosystems. Some amphibians attempted to adapt by growing larger, developing more robust skeletons, or evolving specialized feeding strategies. Giant amphibians like Eriops and Seimuria roamed Permian wetlands and rivers. These creatures were formidable, reaching lengths of several meters. They fed on fish, small reptiles, and invertebrates. Yet, despite their size, they remained constrained by their reliance on water. The fragmentation of Carboniferous forests further challenged amphibian populations. As trees declined and landscapes dried, amphibians lost the moist microhabitats they depended on. Reptiles, with their ability to conserve water and thrive in dry climates, expanded into these new territories. Evolution favored reptiles' adaptive traits, and amphibians gradually retreated to environments where moisture remained abundant. Reptiles also possessed metabolic advantages. Although not warm-blooded like mammals or birds, early reptiles had more efficient respiratory systems than amphibians. Their lungs were larger and more complex. Their rib cages facilitated stronger airflow. These traits allowed them to sustain higher activity levels, pursue prey more effectively, and explore open environments where amphibians could not survive. As reptiles spread across the continents, they set the stage for large-scale ecological changes. They became dominant herbivores, reshaping vegetation through constant browsing. They became apex predators, influencing prey populations. They diversified into burrowers, climbers, gliders, and swimmers. Their eggs allowed reproduction independent of rainfall or aquatic habitats, giving them an evolutionary edge that no amphibian could match. The transition from amphibian dominance to reptile dominance reflects one of the major ecological shifts in Earth's history. It was not a sudden replacement, but a prolonged process driven by climate change, habitat fragmentation, and biological innovations. Amphibians had flourished in the warm, swampy, carboniferous world, but the shifting Permian climate favored animals better suited for dryness and fluctuating conditions. By the mid-Permian period, reptiles had firmly established themselves as the ruling vertebrates on land. Their diversity continued to expand, particularly among synapsids and diapsids. Synapsids produced a variety of predators and herbivores, some of which grew to impressive sizes. Diapsids, though still relatively small, evolved traits that would eventually give rise to the archosaurs, the ancestors of crocodiles, pterosaurs, and dinosaurs. Amphibians did not disappear. They continued surviving in moist environments, evolving into new lineages, and maintaining diversity in freshwater ecosystems. But their era as the dominant land vertebrates had ended. The future belonged to reptiles and their evolutionary descendants. The rise of reptiles also played a role in reshaping Earth's climate and geology. As reptiles expanded into new regions, they changed plant-animal interactions. Herbivorous reptiles influenced vegetation growth patterns. Predators influenced prey behavior and distribution. Ecosystems became more structured and dynamic. Terrestrial environments became arenas of competition, predation, and adaptation. As the Permian period advanced, Earth's environments continued to shift. Regions near the equator grew hotter and drier. Deserts expanded. Seasonal climates intensified. Reptiles thrived in these conditions. Amphibians, unable to cope with such dryness, became increasingly restricted. The stage was set for reptiles to diversify further and for evolutionary paths that would eventually lead to the rise of dinosaurs. In this era of transition, amphibians passed the torch of terrestrial dominance to reptiles. The small, lizard-like amniotes of the late Carboniferous evolved into the great reptilian lineages of the Permian, Triassic, and beyond. Their innovations, the amniotic egg, waterproof skin, efficient lungs, and strong skeletons, paved the way for future evolutionary successes. Soon, the world would witness even greater reptilian diversity. Mammal-like reptiles would flourish. Early archosaurs would rise. And after a catastrophic mass extinction at the end of the Permian, the planet would prepare for a dramatic new chapter, the age of dinosaurs. As the Permian period unfolded, Earth underwent a geological transformation of colossal scale. Drifting continents, shaped by millions of years of plate tectonics, gradually moved toward one another. By around 299 million years ago, they collided and fused into a single, enormous landmass known as Pangaea. This supercontinent stretched from pole to pole, surrounded by the vast global ocean Panthalassa and bordered on its eastern side by the smaller Tethys Sea. Pangaea was a world unlike anything Earth had seen before, a world that reshaped climates, ecosystems, evolution, and the destiny of life itself. The formation of Pangaea began long before the Permian. Ancient continents such as Laurentia, Gondwana, and Baltica had been moving steadily across the planet. Their collisions during the late Carboniferous and early Permian created massive mountain ranges, including the Ural Mountains, which formed as the continents finally joined. These collisions profoundly altered atmospheric circulation, ocean currents, and rainfall patterns. As the land masses locked together, the supercontinent grew immensely diverse in its landscapes, yet unified in its geological presence. Pangaea's size created extreme climate contrasts. The interior of the supercontinent was vast and far from the moderating influence of oceans. Temperatures in these inland regions were scorching during the day and freezing at night. Intense seasonal variations occurred due to Pangaea's enormous size and the shifting tilt of Earth's axis. Monsoons, droughts, and desertification became common across central Pangaea. Meanwhile, coastal regions experienced more moderate climates and supported lush vegetation. The supercontinent's interior is believed to have hosted immense deserts, including the Karoo and Erg deserts, which rivaled or surpassed the modern Sahara. Sand dunes reached towering heights shaped by relentless winds. Few life forms could survive in these arid zones. The lack of moisture, combined with extreme temperature swings, made the central regions of Pangaea some of the harshest environments ever known. In contrast, the coastal fringes of Pangaea supported rich and diverse ecosystems. River systems flowed from the interior toward the edges, carving valleys and nourishing plant life. Swampy regions reminiscent of Carboniferous landscapes persisted, though they gradually declined as climate shifted. Forests composed of seed ferns, conifers, and cordytes grew near coasts and riverbanks. These plants were better adapted to drier conditions than the giant lycophytes and horsetails of earlier periods. Pangaea's formation played a crucial role in the evolution of terrestrial life. As climates became drier and more seasonal, amphibians struggled to survive outside of moist environments. Reptiles, with their amniotic eggs and water-conserving skin, thrived in the new conditions. Early synapsids and diapsids diversified across the continent. Some adapted to desert regions, while others populated forests and floodplains. The challenges posed by Pangaea's climate accelerated evolutionary change, shaping organisms into more resilient and specialized forms. Among the dominant terrestrial animals of this era were the synapsids, often called mammal-like reptiles, though they were not true mammals. These creatures included Dimetrodon, Edaphosaurus, and later therapsids. Dimetrodon, with its iconic sailback, roamed Pangaea as an apex predator. Its sail may have helped regulate body temperature in Pangaea's extreme climate. Herbivores, like Edaphosaurus, fed on tough vegetation using specialized teeth. The later therapsids evolved more advanced jaws, differentiated teeth, and limb postures increasingly resembling those of mammals. Therapsids became particularly successful during the Middle to Late Permian. They diversified into carnivores, herbivores, and omnivores. Some evolved insulating body coverings, possibly early forms of hair. These adaptations represented evolutionary steps toward the mammals that would appear long after the Permian ended. In the dynamic environments of Pangaea, therapsids became the dominant land vertebrates, inhabiting ecosystems from the coasts to the interior plains. Diapsids also continued evolving, giving rise to early reptiles that would later dominate the Mesozoic. While diapsids were not yet as diverse or as dominant as synapsids during the Permian, they occupied important ecological roles. Some became agile predators, others adapted to arboreal lifestyles, and still others explored semi-aquatic niches. Their evolutionary trajectory would set the stage for the rise of archosaurs and ultimately the dinosaurs. Plants on Pangaea adapted to increasingly dry conditions. Conifers, with their tough needles and water-efficient structures, spread across uplands and dry plains. Seed ferns remained common in wetter areas. Glossopteris, a widespread seed fern, dominated much of Gondwana, revealing patterns of climate and continental arrangement through its fossil distribution. Its presence across southern regions provided early evidence for the theory of continental drift. The oceans surrounding Pangaea were equally remarkable. Panthalassa, the vast global ocean, covered most of Earth's surface and influenced global climate through deep currents and powerful storms. The Tethys Sea, located between the northern and southern portions of Pangaea, became a hotspot of marine diversity. Reefs, fish, ammonites, and early marine reptiles flourished in these warm, nutrient-rich waters. Trilobites, however, were declining, having suffered losses in earlier extinctions. The movement of Pangaea also influenced volcanic activity. Tectonic collisions created mountain ranges, while rifting zones and volcanic arcs formed along coastal regions. Volcanic eruptions released gases that affected climate patterns. Some eruptions contributed to short-term cooling through aerosols in the atmosphere. Others released carbon dioxide, contributing to long-term warming. The supercontinent also influenced Earth's rotation and the distribution of sunlight. Because Pangaea extended from pole to pole, it disrupted heat distribution and intensified seasonal differences. Monsoon cycles became stronger. Rainfall patterns shifted dramatically. Some regions experienced extreme wet seasons, followed by prolonged droughts. Life had to adapt to these unpredictable conditions. Despite these challenges, ecosystems flourished. Freshwater habitats supported amphibians, fish, and early aquatic reptiles. Terrestrial ecosystems housed diverse synapsids, diapsids, and invertebrates. Extensive forests supported food webs filled with insects, small reptiles, and large herbivores. Predatory therapsids patrolled woodlands, hunting creatures hidden among ferns and conifers. But the stability of Pangaea was fragile. The very forces that created the supercontinent also set the stage for dramatic environmental changes. Reduced coastal areas, limited marine habitats. Large-scale atmospheric circulation patterns created extreme climates. Volcanic activity and changes in ocean chemistry contributed to ecological stress. Environmental instability increased toward the late Permian, leading to declines in biodiversity. Ultimately, Pangaea became the stage for the greatest mass extinction in Earth's history, the Permian Triassic Extinction Event. Occurring around 252 million years ago, this catastrophe wiped out roughly 90% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrate species. Massive volcanic eruptions in the Siberian traps released enormous amounts of greenhouse gases, leading to global warming, ocean acidification, and widespread anoxia. Pangaea's vast interior exacerbated the impacts, creating inhospitable environments across the continent. Yet, before this devastating event, Pangaea had played its evolutionary role. It forced life to adapt to new climates. It shaped the evolution of reptiles, including the ancestors of dinosaurs and mammals. It concentrated habitats and drove competition. It created deserts, forests, mountains, and coastlines that challenged organisms to innovate and evolve. The supercontinent was both a crucible of life and a harbinger of mass extinction. After the collapse of the Permian ecosystems, Pangaea did not disappear immediately. It would remain intact well into the Mesozoic era, eventually breaking apart and giving rise to the continents we know today. But during the Permian, Pangaea stood as a monumental expression of geological forces, a single landmass filled with dynamic ecosystems, a world of challenges and opportunities. The story of Pangaea is the story of Earth's shifting face, of climates pushed to extremes, of biological innovation under pressure. It was a world where early reptiles and mammal-like synapsids rose to dominance, where vegetation adapted to dryness, and where atmospheric and geological changes set the stage for both flourishing and devastation. And as the Permian drew to a close, the world braced for an event that would reset life on Earth, clearing the way for a new era, the rise of the dinosaurs and the beginning of the Mesozoic. The world of the late Permian was a place of extremes. The supercontinent Pangaea stretched across the globe, reshaping climates, ocean currents, and ecosystems. Life had diversified into a wide range of forms, from giant forests to advanced synapsids, from early reptiles to complex marine communities. But beneath this thriving surface, Earth was approaching a catastrophic turning point. Around 252 million years ago, the planet experienced the most devastating mass extinction in its history, the Permian mass extinction, often called the Great Dying. It marked the end of the Paleozoic era and reshaped life on Earth forever. The scale of the Permian mass extinction was unprecedented. An estimated 90 to 96% of marine species vanished. Roughly 70% of terrestrial vertebrate species disappeared. Countless invertebrates, insects, plants, and microorganisms went extinct. Entire ecosystems collapsed. Reefs that had thrived for millions of years disintegrated. Forests died back. Food webs were disrupted at every level. Life on Earth came closer to complete annihilation than at any other known time. The cause of this extinction was not a single event, but a cascade of environmental catastrophes, many of which were triggered by massive volcanic eruptions in what is now Siberia. These eruptions, known as the Siberian Traps, lasted for hundreds of thousands of years. They released tremendous volumes of lava, covering millions of square kilometers. But the lava itself was only part of the problem. The eruptions also unleashed colossal amounts of greenhouse gases, particularly carbon dioxide and methane, into the atmosphere. The rapid increase in greenhouse gases triggered severe global warming. Temperatures rose sharply, leading to heat stress across many ecosystems. In some regions, temperatures may have exceeded the tolerance limits of both marine and terrestrial life. The combination of direct volcanic emissions, warming oceans, disrupted circulation, and atmospheric instability initiated a chain reaction of environmental changes that life could not withstand. One of the earliest consequences of the warming atmosphere was ocean acidification. As carbon dioxide dissolved into seawater, it formed carbonic acid, lowering the ocean's pH. Many marine organisms, particularly those with calcium carbonate shells or skeletons, struggle to survive in these increasingly acidic waters. Corals, brachiopods, and other calcifying species declined. Reefs that had been stable for millions of years dissolved or collapsed. As warming continued, ocean temperatures rose significantly. Warm water holds less oxygen, and as temperatures climbed, oxygen levels in the oceans decreased. This oxygen loss triggered widespread anoxia regions of water completely devoid of oxygen. In these dead zones, marine animals suffocated. Entire ecosystems collapsed as fish, mollusks, and arthropods perished. Only specialized anaerobic microbes could survive in these conditions. The anoxic waters also promoted the growth of certain bacteria that produced hydrogen sulfide, a toxic gas. As these bacteria flourished, hydrogen sulfide levels increased in the oceans and possibly in the atmosphere. This toxic gas could have caused mass die-offs of marine and terrestrial organisms alike, damaging respiratory systems and disrupting biological processes. Volcanism also released large amounts of sulfur dioxide, which initially caused short-term cooling by reflecting sunlight. But as carbon dioxide accumulated, long-term warming overwhelmed these temporary cooling phases. The climate became unstable, swinging between extremes. Droughts, heat waves, and unpredictable weather patterns became common. Many plants died due to the intense climate fluctuations, leading to reduced oxygen production and increased atmospheric carbon dioxide. Drought and desertification spread across Pangaea's interior. Once lush forests withered under the relentless heat. As vegetation declined, soils eroded, rivers changed course, and ecosystems collapsed. Herbivores starved. Predators lost their prey. Complex food webs unraveled rapidly. On land, synapsids suffered catastrophic losses. Once dominant species like Dimetrodon had already disappeared earlier in the Permian. But many surviving therapsids, the advanced synapsids more closely related to mammals, were wiped out during the extinction event. Only a few lineages survived, including small burrowing species that could escape surface heat and drought by living underground. These survivors would eventually give rise to mammals millions of years later. Insect populations also experienced severe declines. The Permian mass extinction stands as one of the rare times when insects suffered global extinction events. Many species that depended on forests or specific plant groups vanished as vegetation patterns changed dramatically. Earth's oceans faced equal devastation. Marine life had already been stressed by warming and acidification, but anoxia intensified the collapse. Deep waters turned into toxic environments filled with hydrogen sulfide-producing bacteria. Coral reefs completely died off. Trilobites, which had existed for over 270 million years, went extinct entirely. Ammonoids, brachiopods, some fish groups, and countless invertebrates suffered dramatic losses. As conditions worsened, methane clathrates frozen. Methane deposits beneath the seafloor may have destabilized due to warming oceans. This released large quantities of methane, another potent greenhouse gas, further accelerating global warming. This runaway feedback loop pushed temperatures even higher, possibly by several degrees, creating one of the hottest periods in Earth's history. The devastation was not limited to oceans and coasts. Volcanic activity from the Siberian traps may have ignited coal seams, releasing additional carbon dioxide and toxic gases. Ash clouds darkened skies. Acid rain fell across continents, harming plant life and altering water chemistry. Ecosystems that depended on stable climatic cycles were overwhelmed by the rapid changes. Yet the Permian mass extinction was not instantaneous. It unfolded over tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of years, a blink in geological time, but long enough for multiple waves of extinction. Some species declined gradually, while others were suddenly wiped out during peak environmental stress. The patchwork of extinction patterns reflects the complexity of the crisis. After the initial collapse, recovery was slow. The world that emerged after the extinction was drastically different from the one that existed before. Forests had vanished in many regions. Ecosystems were simplified. Biodiversity was low. Many ecological roles remained empty for millions of years. The survivors were often small, generalist species capable of withstanding harsh conditions. In the oceans, microbial communities dominated for a time as they adapted quickly to high temperatures and low oxygen. Sponges and bivalves slowly re-established themselves, but reefs remained absent for millions of years. Terrestrial ecosystems saw the rise of hardy synapsids and early archosaurs, which would eventually give rise to the dinosaurs. Recovery took at least 5 million years to show significant progress, and up to 15 million years to fully restore ecological complexity. Scientists studying the Permian mass extinction have uncovered evidence from volcanic rocks, fossil records, isotope analyses, and sediment cores. These clues reveal a picture of cascading environmental collapse triggered by volcanism, intensified by greenhouse gases, and amplified by feedback loops involving oceans, climate, and biological processes. It was a moment when Earth's interconnected systems spiraled into catastrophe. The Permian extinction reshaped the evolutionary landscape. By eliminating dominant groups, it opened ecological space for new lineages to rise. Early archosaurs, which were small and relatively obscure before the extinction, diversified rapidly in the New World. Their descendants, crocodiles, pterosaurs, and dinosaurs, would dominate terrestrial and aerial ecosystems during the Mesozoic era. Similarly, the ancestors of mammals survived only as small, inconspicuous species, but carried forward the traits needed for future success. The Permian mass extinction also serves as a stark reminder of Earth's fragility and resilience. Life nearly disappeared, yet the survivors found ways to adapt, evolve, and eventually flourish. Ecosystems rebuilt themselves through slow processes of colonization, diversification, and ecological specialization. The world that emerged from the ashes was a blank canvas, ready for new forms of life. And in the next chapter of Earth's history, evolution would paint that canvas with some of the most iconic creatures ever to walk the planet, the dinosaurs. The Permian mass extinction reset life on Earth. When its devastation finally eased, the world that emerged was almost unrecognizable. Ecosystems were stripped bare, biodiversity had collapsed, and only a fraction of species survived. Yet, in this emptiness lay opportunity. Evolution began again from the surviving branches, and in the rejuvenated Triassic landscapes, a new caste of reptiles rose to dominate the Earth. Among them were the earliest dinosaurs, still small and overshadowed at first, but destined to become icons of the Mesozoic era. After the extinction, Earth entered the Triassic period, beginning around 252 million years ago. The climate was hot and dry across much of the supercontinent Pangaea. Deserts stretched for thousands of kilometers. Monsoons battered coastal regions. The recovery of life was slow, but as millions of years passed, plants, insects, and vertebrates gradually filled vacant niches. Conifer forests spread, ferns and cycads flourished, and early coral reefs began rebuilding. Ecosystems stabilized, and new evolutionary experiments emerged. The dominant terrestrial animals of the early Triassic were not dinosaurs, but the survivors of the synapsid lineage. Therapsids, often called mammal-like reptiles, had weathered the extinction better than most groups. Species such as Lystrosaurus became extraordinarily abundant. Lystrosaurus, a stocky herbivore with tusks and a beak-like mouth, spread across Pangaea and may have accounted for over half of all terrestrial vertebrates. Its remarkable success was due to its generalist diet, burrowing lifestyle, and ability to withstand harsh environmental conditions. Other therapsids, including cynodonts, also persisted. Cynodonts were small, agile creatures with differentiated teeth and advanced jaw structures. They possessed traits such as whisker-like sensory hairs and possibly warm-blooded metabolism, bringing them closer to true mammals. They hunted insects, scavenged, and exploited ecological niches unavailable to larger reptiles. Though they were overshadowed by reptiles later in the Triassic, cynodonts would give rise to mammals long after the age of dinosaurs ended. While synapsids dominated early recovery, reptiles soon diversified into powerful new lineages. Among the most important were the archosaurs, the group that would eventually produce crocodiles, pterosaurs, dinosaurs, and birds. Early archosaurs evolved erect postures, strong limbs, and efficient respiratory systems that could support high activity levels. These adaptations allowed them to thrive in the hot Triassic climate, where oxygen levels were lower and endurance was essential for survival. Archosaurs split into two major branches: the pseudosuchians, which would lead to crocodiles, and the avemetatarsalia, which would lead to dinosaurs and pterosaurs. During the early and mid-Triassic, pseudosuchians dominated terrestrial ecosystems. They evolved into a variety of forms, some heavily armored, some slender and fast, and some apex predators. Among these pseudosuchians was Proterozoic, a powerful predator with long legs, sharp teeth, and a skull built for crushing prey. Proterozoic and its relatives patrolled Triassic floodplains, hunting early reptiles, amphibians, and small synapsids. Other pseudosuchians, such as atosaurs, became armored herbivores with body plates and crocodile-like appearances. Their diversity demonstrated the evolutionary potential of archosaurs long before dinosaurs rose to prominence. The earliest dinosaurs appeared around 233 million years ago, during the late Triassic, but they were not yet the giants that would rule the Jurassic and Cretaceous. They were small, lightly built animals, often overshadowed by larger archosaurs. Early dinosaurs included forms such as Heterosaurus, Eoraptor, and Staurikosaurus, slender, bipedal predators or omnivores that hunted insects and small vertebrates. Their lightweight skeletons, long tails, and hollow bones made them agile runners. Dinosaurs were distinguished by their unique hip structure, enabling an upright gait with legs positioned directly under the body. This posture increased speed, endurance, and efficiency, giving dinosaurs an edge over sprawling reptiles. Their respiratory system, possibly involving air sacs similar to those in modern birds, allowed for high metabolic output and sustained activity. These anatomical advantages laid the foundation for their future dominance. Herbivorous dinosaurs also appeared during the Triassic. Early forms such as Plateosaurus, a large, long-necked prosauropod, grazed on ferns and cycads. Plateosaurus could walk on 2 or 4 legs and used its long neck to reach vegetation. Though not yet a true giant, it represented the first wave of large herbivorous dinosaurs that would later evolve into the colossal sauropods. Alongside dinosaurs, pterosaurs, the first vertebrates to achieve powered flight, took to the skies. Their wings were formed from membranes stretched along elongated fourth fingers. Early pterosaurs such as Eudimorphodon soared over coastlines and lakes, hunting fish and insects. Their hollow bones, lightweight frames, and specialized musculature allowed them to dominate aerial ecosystems long before birds appeared. Marine reptiles also diversified during the Triassic. Ichthyosaurs, resembling dolphin-like predators, evolved streamlined bodies and powerful tails that made them swift swimmers. Nothosaurs and placodonts patrolled shallow seas, with some specialized for crushing shellfish and others for capturing fish. These marine reptiles filled ecological roles left vacant after the Permian extinction, helping rebuild ocean ecosystems. As the Triassic progressed, dinosaurs began to expand. The climate became more favorable, vegetation increased, and crocodilian relatives began to decline in many habitats. Competition among reptiles drove adaptation and specialization. Dinosaurs gradually diversified into multiple groups, including theropods, sauropodomorphs, and ornithischians. Their ability to walk upright, breathe efficiently, and regulate body temperature gave them advantages in diverse environments. Toward the end of the Triassic, another major extinction event struck. Volcanic eruptions associated with the breakup of Pangaea released massive amounts of carbon dioxide, triggering global warming and ocean acidification. This extinction eliminated many of the dominant pseudosuchians, opening ecological space for dinosaurs. Unlike the Permian extinction, the late Triassic extinction was smaller in scale, but its impact on evolution was profound. With their competitors diminished, dinosaurs surged into dominance. Once the early reptiles and archosaurs that had overshadowed them declined, dinosaurs expanded rapidly across Pangaea. They diversified into predators, herbivores, scavengers, and omnivores. Their body sizes grew. Their ecological roles multiplied. By the beginning of the Jurassic period, dinosaurs were firmly established as the dominant terrestrial vertebrates on Earth. The age of early dinosaurs and reptiles was a time of experimentation and transition. Life was recovering from near annihilation. Ecosystems were rebuilding. Reptiles adapted to new climates and seized new opportunities. Archosaurs diversified into powerful forms that would shape the Mesozoic. Synapsids persisted but shifted into smaller, nocturnal niches. Marine reptiles took to the oceans. Pterosaurs claimed the skies. What began in the aftermath of catastrophe ended in the rise of one of the most successful groups of animals in Earth's history. Dinosaurs, still small and relatively obscure during much of the Triassic, emerged from this period poised for evolutionary triumph. Soon, they would grow into giants, dominate every continent, and rule the planet for more than 150 million years. When the Triassic period came to a close with yet another extinction event, many dominant reptile groups vanished, clearing ecological space across the supercontinent Pangaea. Into this newly opened world stepped the dinosaurs, who, over millions of years, grew larger, more diverse, and more successful than any land animals before them. The Jurassic period, beginning around 201 million years ago, marked the true flourishing of dinosaurs. It was a time of warm climates, lush vegetation, rising sea levels, and vast forests. Ecosystems stabilized and diversified, creating an environment where gigantic herbivores could thrive and shape the world around them. During the early Jurassic, the breakup of Pangaea had begun. Rifts opened across the supercontinent, forming new coastlines and shallow seas. Climates became more humid and stable as ocean circulation patterns changed. Monsoon systems diminished, and deserts that characterized the Triassic interior began shrinking. This climatic shift supported an explosion of vegetation, ferns, conifers, cycads, and ginkgos-filled landscapes from coastlines to uplands. With abundant food and stable environments, dinosaurs expanded dramatically in size and diversity. The most iconic creatures of the Jurassic were the giant herbivorous sauropods. These massive animals evolved from earlier prosauropods of the Triassic, adapting to a world of towering trees and expansive forests. Sauropods developed long necks that allowed them to reach high vegetation, enabling them to feed on conifer branches and leafy canopies. Their powerful legs supported enormous bodies, some weighing more than 50 tons. Their long tails provided balance and defense. Among the earliest and most famous sauropods was Diplodocus, with its whip-like tail and long, slender neck. Apatosaurus, formerly known as Brontosaurus, possessed a more robust body and thick, muscular limbs. Brachiosaurus towered above other dinosaurs, with its front legs longer than its hind legs, giving its body a distinctive upward slope. This posture allowed Brachiosaurus to browse vegetation at heights no other herbivore could reach. The selective pressure on plants caused by these massive herbivores shaped Jurassic ecosystems. Trees developed tougher foliage, thicker bark, and higher growth patterns to avoid being eaten. Forests adapted to the constant browsing of herds that roamed in vast numbers. In turn, sauropods developed specialized teeth and digestive systems capable of extracting nutrients from fibrous plant material. Some species swallowed stones, gastroliths, to grind food in their massive stomachs. Sauropods lived in social groups, migrating across large territories in search of fresh vegetation. Their movements influenced entire ecosystems. As they fed, they cleared forests, opened grassland like clearings, and stimulated new plant growth. Their footsteps carved pathways through woodlands. Their massive dung-enriched soils and sustained insect populations. In many ways, sauropods acted as ecological engineers, shaping the environment through their feeding and movement behaviors. While sauropods dominated the herbivorous niche, other dinosaur groups flourished as well. Stegosaurs evolved armor plates, spikes, and tail weapons for defense. Stegosaurs, such as Stegosaurus, roamed floodplains, feeding on low vegetation like ferns and cycads. Their iconic backplates may have played roles in thermoregulation or display. The sharp spikes on their tails, the thagomizers, served as powerful weapons against predators. Ornithopods, the ancestors of later duck-billed dinosaurs, were smaller but highly adaptable herbivores. Early ornithopods, such as Camptosaurus, moved on 2 or 4 legs and fed on a variety of plants. Their agility and keen senses allowed them to evade predators, while their flexible jaws and grinding teeth let them exploit diverse vegetation. Jurassic ecosystems also supported diverse predators. Apex predators of this era included the allosaurids, large theropods with sharp teeth, powerful jaws, and curved claws. Allosaurus, one of the most well-known predators of the Jurassic, hunted sauropods, stegosaurs, and ornithopods. It possessed strong hind limbs for running and a flexible neck that allowed it to deliver deep, slicing bites. Though not as large as later theropods like Tyrannosaurus, Allosaurus was agile and highly effective. Predators needed varied strategies to hunt enormous herbivores. Some may have hunted in groups, coordinating attacks on weakened or young sauropods. Others relied on ambush, using forest cover to strike with speed. Even small theropods played important roles as scavengers or swift hunters of smaller prey. The diversity of predatory strategies mirrored the complexity of Jurassic ecosystems. Pterosaurs also expanded during the Jurassic. These flying reptiles diversified into many forms, from small insect eaters to large fish-hunting species. Their wings, supported by elongated fourth fingers, enabled efficient gliding and soaring. Pterosaurs occupied coastal cliffs, lakesides, and river valleys. They hunted insects, fish, and small vertebrates. Some species developed elaborate crests, possibly used for display or mating rituals. Jurassic seas were equally rich and diverse. Marine reptiles flourished as they adapted to new marine environments created by the breakup of Pangaea. Ichthyosaurs reached peak diversity, resembling dolphins in speed and agility. Plesiosaurs evolved long necks and small heads for catching fish, while pliosaurs developed massive jaws and muscular bodies for hunting larger prey. Ammonites, spiral-shelled cephalopods, thrived in the oceans and became important index fossils for identifying Jurassic rock layers. Coral reefs continued to expand, supporting vibrant ecosystems of fish, crustaceans, mollusks, and marine reptiles. Marine food webs were complex, with predators occupying multiple trophic levels. The stability of the Jurassic climate contributed to the growth and diversification of ocean life. As vegetation spread and dinosaurs diversified, insects evolved alongside them. Jurassic forests supported beetles, dragonflies, termites, and early butterflies. Insect pollination began to develop more extensively, especially among cycads and ginkgos. Dragonflies, though smaller than their giant carboniferous ancestors, remained skilled aerial predators. The interaction between plants and insects shaped the evolution of both groups, establishing ecological relationships that persist today. The breakup of Pangaea continued throughout the Jurassic, creating new continents, islands, and coastlines. As continents drifted apart, new species evolved in isolation. This geographic separation contributed to biodiversity as populations adapted to different climates and environments. The shifting continents also influenced ocean circulation, rainfall patterns, and climate distribution. The Jurassic climate was generally warm and moist, with fewer temperature extremes than the Triassic. Stable rainfall patterns supported dense vegetation. River systems flowed through forests, creating habitats for amphibians, reptiles, and early mammals. Small mammals, descendants of cynodonts, were nocturnal insect eaters that avoided dinosaur dominance by thriving in niches where dinosaurs were less active. Though small and inconspicuous, these early mammals carried the traits that would later shape mammalian evolution. The abundance of vegetation fueled the growth of the largest land animals ever to exist. Sauropods reached unprecedented sizes during the late Jurassic. Species like Argentinosaurus and Supersaurus approached or exceeded lengths of 30 meters. Their size offered protection against predators, allowed efficient energy use, and enabled them to access vegetation other animals could not reach. The sheer scale of sauropods remains one of the most extraordinary outcomes of evolution. The interaction between giant herbivores and predators drove evolutionary adaptations. Predators developed stronger jaws, sharper teeth, and more powerful limbs. Herbivores developed armor, size, and defensive strategies. Plants evolved spines, toxins, and rapid growth. These evolutionary arms races contributed to the complexity and dynamism of Jurassic ecosystems. Forest fires occasionally swept through Jurassic landscapes, clearing dense vegetation and creating opportunities for new growth. Volcanic eruptions, though less catastrophic than the Siberian traps, also influenced climates and ecosystems. These disturbances fostered ecological turnover, helping maintain biodiversity by opening niches for new species. As the Jurassic period progressed, dinosaurs continued to expand across the globe. Sauropods dominated floodplains and forests. Stegosaurs thrived in lowland regions. allosaurs ruled as apex predators. Pterosaurs filled the skies, and marine reptiles conquered the seas. The world had become a dinosaur-dominated planet, shaped by the interplay of climate, vegetation, and evolutionary innovation. The Jurassic ended not with a catastrophic extinction, but with gradual ecological change. New dinosaur groups began emerging, continents continued to drift, climates shifted slowly. And the next chapter, the Cretaceous period, would see the rise of even more extraordinary creatures, including the apex predators and towering herbivores that would define the final age of dinosaurs. The Cretaceous period, beginning around 145 million years ago, marked a turning point in the Mesozoic era. It was a world of extraordinary diversity, shifting continents, rising seas, and the evolution of some of the most iconic creatures in Earth's history. Dinosaurs reached new heights of size, specialization, and ecological dominance. Flowering plants transformed landscapes. And apex predators, including some of the most fearsome theropods ever to live, ruled the land with unmatched power. The Cretaceous world was dynamic, vibrant, and full of evolutionary innovation. During the early Cretaceous, the breakup of Pangaea continued. Continents drifted apart, creating isolated landmasses that fostered new species through evolutionary divergence. Shallow seas flooded continental interiors, forming vast seaways such as the Western Interior Seaway in North America. Warm, humid climates dominated much of the globe, though seasonal variations increased as continents moved closer to their modern positions. One of the most profound developments of the Cretaceous was the rise of flowering plants, or angiosperms. Appearing during the early Cretaceous, these plants rapidly diversified. Unlike earlier plant groups such as conifers and cycads, angiosperms used flowers to attract pollinators and enclose seeds within fruits. Their ability to reproduce efficiently and adapt to diverse environments allowed them to spread quickly. Flowering plants transformed ecosystems by creating new food sources for insects, herbivores, and eventually birds and mammals. Insects co-evolved alongside angiosperms. Bees, butterflies, ants, and beetles diversified dramatically. Pollination became a major ecological force, influencing plant evolution and interactions. Insects fed on nectar, pollen, and leaves, forming complex food webs that supported a growing variety of animals. As vegetation changed, herbivorous dinosaurs evolved new feeding strategies. Hadrosaurs, duck-billed dinosaurs, developed intricate dental batteries capable of grinding tough plant material. They lived in herds and occupied diverse habitats, from coastlines to forested uplands. Ceratopsians, such as Triceratops, evolved elaborate frills and horns for defense, display, and combat. Their beak-like mouths allowed them to shear through vegetation with efficiency. Ankylosaurs developed body armor of fused bone plates and wielded massive tail clubs for protection. Pachycephalosaurs evolved thick, dome-shaped skulls, possibly used in headbutting contests. Sauropods, though declining in some regions, continued to thrive in others. Titanosaurs, the last great sauropods, reached colossal sizes in the southern continents, including species like Argentinian and Patagoteton, some of the largest land animals to ever exist. But the Cretaceous is remembered most vividly for its apex predators. Among them, Tyrannosaurus stands as one of the most famous. Tyrannosaurus rex, appearing in the late Cretaceous, was a massive theropod, measuring up to 12 meters long and weighing over 8 tons. With powerful jaws capable of delivering bone-crushing bites, stereo vision, and a highly developed sense of smell, T-Rex was one of the most formidable predators in Earth's history. With its elongated skull, conical teeth, and crocodile-like anatomy, Spinosaurus was adapted for a semi-aquatic lifestyle. It hunted fish and possibly scavenged large carcasses. Its distinctive sail, formed by long neural spines along its back, may have been used for display or thermoregulation. Giganotosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus were among the largest land predators of the southern continents. These massive theropods rivaled or even exceeded T-Rex in length. They possessed blade-like teeth ideal for slicing flesh, contrasting with the crushing bite strategy of tyrannosaurids. Their size and hunting strategies reflected the prey available in their ecosystems, including large sauropods. Velociraptor, smaller but highly intelligent and agile, hunted in packs and used its sickle-shaped claws to pin down prey. Though much smaller than popular portrayals, closer in size to a turkey velociraptor was a highly efficient predator. Its feathers, keen senses, and lightweight body demonstrated the close evolutionary ties between theropods and birds. Indeed, birds evolved from small, feathered theropods during the Jurassic and continued diversifying throughout the Cretaceous. Early birds such as Archaeopteryx and later forms like Ichthyornis developed powered flight, advanced feathers, and specialized beaks. Birds coexisted with pterosaurs, though the latter remained dominant aerial predators for much of the Cretaceous. Some pterosaurs, such as Quetzalcoatlus, reached wingspans exceeding 10 meters, making them the largest flying animals ever to exist. Cretaceous oceans teemed with life. Plesiosaurs, mosasaurs, and giant sharks patrolled the depths. Mosasaurs, powerful marine lizards related to modern monitor lizards, became dominant marine predators in the later Cretaceous. Their long bodies, paddle-like limbs, and double-hinged jaws allowed them to pursue fish, turtles, and even smaller marine reptiles. Plesiosaurs, with their long necks and small heads, hunted schools of fish and squid-like creatures. Ichthyosaurs, though declining, still inhabited some seas early in the period. Ammonites and belemnites thrived in marine environments, serving as key food sources for predators. Coral reefs expanded across tropical regions. Plankton populations grew, contributing to complex marine food webs that supported diverse fish and reptile species. As the Cretaceous progressed, global climate shifted. The Earth remained generally warm, but differences in temperature increased between equatorial and polar regions. Flowering plants spread into new habitats, altering landscapes and supporting diverse herbivores. Forests became more open in some areas, while dense jungles formed in others. Continental drift continued to shape evolution. As land masses separated, species evolved in isolation. This led to remarkable regional diversity. For example, South America became home to unique titanosaurs and giant predators like Giganotosaurus. Asia produced feathered theropods and early bird species. North America saw the rise of tyrannosaurids, ceratopsians, and hadrosaurs. During the late Cretaceous, ecosystems reached extraordinary complexity. In North America's western interior, herds of triceratops, ankylosaurs, hadrosaurs, and pachycephalosaurs roamed floodplains and coastal forests. Apex predators such as T-Rex controlled hunting territories. Small mammals hunted insects at night. Birds filled niches ranging from fish hunters to forest dwellers. Insects pollinated flowering plants, maintaining interconnected food webs. Predator-prey dynamics shaped dinosaur evolution. Herbivores developed defensive adaptations such as horns, spikes, armor, and speed. Predators evolved stronger jaws, sharper claws, keen senses, and advanced hunting strategies. These evolutionary arms races enriched biodiversity and maintained ecological balance. In the oceans, mosasaurs reached peak dominance. Their streamlined bodies and powerful tails made them formidable hunters. Some species grew longer than 15 meters. Plesiosaurs adapted to specialized niches, with some evolving massive skulls and others maintaining slender necks. Sharks, such as Cretoxorhina, preyed on fish and marine reptiles. Fish diversity expanded dramatically, including early forms of modern teleost fish. Despite its flourishing life, the Cretaceous period was approaching its end. Geological and climatic changes hinted at instability. Volcanic activity increased in certain regions. Ecosystems became more specialized and therefore more vulnerable to disruption. Although life was thriving, it was highly interconnected and fragile. The end would come suddenly, not through gradual decline, but through an event of catastrophic proportions. A massive asteroid impact near the Yucatan Peninsula, combined with decades of volcanic eruptions and climatic chaos, would end the reign of the dinosaurs and reshape the planet once again. But before the impact, the Cretaceous world stood at its peak, a planet vibrant with forests, oceans teeming with predators, skies filled with flying reptiles and birds, and continents dominated by magnificent dinosaurs. Apex predators ruled with unmatched power. Herbivores grew to extraordinary sizes. Flowering plants painted the landscapes with new colors. It was a world of giants, hunters, innovators, and survivors. The Cretaceous world, rich and dynamic, represented the final and most spectacular chapter in the age of dinosaurs, a golden era soon to be shattered by an event that would change life on Earth forever. 66 million years ago, Earth was a thriving world dominated by dinosaurs. Forests of flowering plants stretched across continents. Oceans teemed with mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, and giant sharks. Pterosaurs soared through the skies alongside increasingly diverse birds. Ecosystems were stable, productive, and richly interconnected. Yet everything was about to change in an instant. An event of unimaginable force struck the planet, triggering one of the most catastrophic mass extinctions in Earth's history. It ended the reign of the dinosaurs and reshaped the course of evolution. The story began in the skies above Earth, where a massive asteroid, roughly 10 to 12 kilometers in diameter, traveled through space at more than 60,000 kilometers per hour. Its origins were likely in the outer asteroid belt, where gravitational disturbances, possibly from Jupiter, launched it on a collision course with Earth. For millions of years, it drifted silently, undetected by the world it would soon destroy. On the day of impact, the asteroid pierced Earth's atmosphere with a blinding flash of light. Friction heated the air, creating temperatures hotter than the sun's surface. Within seconds, the asteroid slammed into what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, forming the Chicxulub crater. The energy released was equivalent to more than 1 billion nuclear bombs. The impact vaporized rock, water, and the asteroid itself, carving a crater nearly 180 kilometers wide and over 20 kilometers deep. The immediate consequences were devastating. Shockwaves radiated outward at supersonic speeds, flattening forests and killing any animals within thousands of kilometers. Molten rock rained from the sky. Superheated air ignited global wildfires, burning entire continents. Tsunamis, hundreds of meters high, crashed into coastlines across the Americas and beyond. But the most destructive effects were yet to unfold. As the asteroid struck, It sent trillions of tons of vaporized rock, sulfur, and dust into the atmosphere. Tiny particles of molten material, called spherules, spread across the planet. These spherules heated the air as they fell, causing temperatures on the surface to spike. Animals caught in open areas may have been instantly incinerated. Global wildfires burned intensely, filling the air with soot. The massive plume of debris launched into the atmosphere formed a dense cloud that wrapped around Earth. Sunlight was blocked by dust, ash, and sulfur aerosols. Darkness fell across the planet, lasting weeks, months, or even years. Photosynthesis, the foundation of nearly all food webs, collapsed. Plants withered. Phytoplankton in the oceans died. Without sunlight, temperatures plummeted, triggering an impact winter. As plants died off, herbivores starved. As herbivores perished, predators lost their primary food sources. The collapse of ecosystems was swift and total. The mass extinction affected life at every level. In the oceans, ammonites, marine reptiles, and many fish species vanished. Coral reefs, already stressed by environmental changes before the impact, suffered massive losses. Mosasaurs and plesiosaurs, apex predators of the seas, disappeared entirely. On land, the dinosaurs faced their final days. The large theropods, including Tyrannosaurus, could not survive the sudden loss of prey. Giant herbivores such as Triceratops and Hadrosaurs succumbed as vegetation died. Ecosystems that had supported dinosaurs for millions of years unraveled within a geological blink. Only small animals that could exploit alternative food sources had a chance to survive. One of the most important survival advantages belonged to mammals. Small, burrowing mammals were able to withstand the impact winter by sheltering underground, feeding on insects, roots, and seeds resources that persisted even when forests collapsed. Their flexibility in diet and habitat allowed them to endure conditions that exterminated larger vertebrates. Though mammals had existed alongside dinosaurs for over 100 million years, they had remained small and relatively inconspicuous. Now, their time to expand had arrived. Birds also survived the extinction. Although many ancient bird lineages vanished, a group of ground-dwelling birds with beaks capable of eating seeds and hard plant material managed to persist. Their ability to feed on durable food sources during the darkness allowed them to withstand the collapse in insect populations and plant life. These surviving birds would eventually diversify into the vast array of species seen today. Insects faced severe declines, but many recovered thanks to their rapid reproduction and adaptability. Freshwater ecosystems also fared relatively well compared to terrestrial and marine environments. Rivers and lakes provided refuges for species less dependent on sunlight-driven food webs, such as certain fish and amphibians. While the asteroid impact was the primary driver of extinction, it was not the only factor shaping the end Cretaceous environment. Volcanic activity in the Deccan Traps of India had been releasing massive amounts of lava, carbon dioxide, and sulfur dioxide for hundreds of thousands of years. Some scientists argue that this volcanism contributed to long-term warming prior to the impact, weakening ecosystems. Others suggest it may have worsened conditions after the impact by prolonging atmospheric disruptions. Whether the volcanism amplified the devastation or played a secondary role, the combination of both events created an environment too extreme for most Cretaceous species to survive. The extinction event eliminated an estimated 75% of all species on Earth: flying reptiles, giant marine reptiles, ammonites, and nearly all large dinosaurs disappeared. Ecosystems collapsed globally. Food webs broke apart. Forests were reduced to charred remnants. The earth was plunged into a state of ecological shock. Yet, in the aftermath of destruction, life began its slow recovery. Within a few hundred years, ferns started to colonize burned landscapes, a pattern known as the fern spike, seen in fossil records around the world. As sunlight gradually returned, plants grew back, soils stabilized, and insects repopulated ecosystems. Mammals emerged from hiding, exploiting new resources and expanding into niches once occupied by dinosaurs. Birds diversified into new forms, filling aerial and terrestrial niches vacated by extinct species. Surviving reptiles adapted to new conditions as well, though their diversity remained far lower than during the Cretaceous. Crocodilians endured the extinction event, perhaps due to their semi-aquatic lifestyles and low metabolism, which allowed them to survive extended periods without food. As the planet healed, mammals began to radiate into astonishing diversity. Freed from the dominance of dinosaurs, they evolved into herbivores, carnivores, scavengers, and arboreal species. Their descendants would give rise to primates, ungulates, whales, bats, rodents, and countless other groups. The extinction event, catastrophic as it was, paved the way for the rise of mammals and ultimately humans. The crater at Chicxulub, buried beneath sediment and ocean water, remains a silent reminder of this catastrophic chapter. Geological layers enriched in iridium, an element rare on Earth but common in asteroids, record the moment of impact. Shocked quartz, spherules, and tsunami deposits provide further evidence. These clues form a global signature, marking the boundary between the Cretaceous and the Paleogene periods. The asteroid impact was a stark demonstration of Earth's vulnerability to cosmic events. It reshaped the trajectory of evolution, ending the age of dinosaurs and ushering in a new era dominated by mammals. Without this impact, the world might have remained a planet of giants, towering sauropods, horned ceratopsians, razor-toothed theropods, and swift ornithopods. Instead, their extinction opened the door for new life forms. The end of the dinosaurs was not the end of life, but a dramatic transformation. Ecosystems were destroyed, yet from the ashes emerged new possibilities. The natural world rebuilt itself, species adapted, and evolution continued its relentless course. In the vast story of Earth's history, the asteroid impact stands as one of the most consequential events, a moment when everything changed in an instant, setting the stage for the rise of mammals and eventually the emergence of humans. In the quiet aftermath of the asteroid impact that ended the age of dinosaurs, Earth entered a period of destruction, emptiness, and slow recovery. Forests were burned, skies were darkened, oceans were disrupted, ecosystems collapsed under the weight of global catastrophe. Yet beneath the devastation, small survivors emerged, creatures that had lived alongside dinosaurs for over 100 million years, but had always remained in the shadows. These were the mammals, once tiny and overlooked, now stepping into a world cleared of towering reptiles. Their rise would reshape the planet and eventually lead to the emergence of humans. Before the extinction, mammals were already a diverse but minor presence in Mesozoic ecosystems. They had evolved from synapsid ancestors during the Triassic and had survived through the Jurassic and Cretaceous in small, nocturnal niches. Mammals possessed key adaptations: warm-blooded metabolism, fur for insulation, advanced hearing, and parental care, but they lived in fear of predatory theropods and competed for limited resources. Their small size was both a limitation and a strength. It allowed them to exploit food sources such as insects, seeds, and small vertebrates that dinosaurs ignored. When the asteroid struck, these very traits became their salvation. Small mammals could hide in burrows, cracks, and sheltered environments that offered protection from firestorms and falling debris. Their ability to feed on a wide range of foods, including insects, roots, and seeds, allowed them to survive when plants withered and prey animals died. Many mammals could enter torpor or hibernation-like states, conserving energy and enduring long periods without food. These strategies helped them withstand the impact winter that devastated larger species. Once sunlight returned and plants began to regrow, mammals quickly took advantage of the recovering ecosystems. Freed from the ecological dominance of dinosaurs, they diversified at an astonishing rate. Their evolutionary expansion during the Paleocene and Eocene epochs is one of the most remarkable radiations in Earth's history. Mammals evolved into forms that filled nearly every available niche: runners, climbers, gliders, swimmers, burrowers, and predators. One of the first major groups to expand were the multituberculates. These rodent-like mammals thrived for millions of years, equipped with specialized molars for grinding plant material. They occupied arboreal and terrestrial habitats, feeding on seeds, nuts, and vegetation. Multituberculates were highly successful until they were eventually outcompeted by early rodents in the Eocene. Placental mammals, those that nourish their young through a placenta before birth, diversified even more dramatically. Early placental mammals were small, but they rapidly evolved into new forms that explored fresh ecological opportunities. From these early ancestors emerged the foundations of modern mammalian orders: primates, carnivores, ungulates, bats, whales, and more. In the Paleocene, Earth's climate was warm and stable. Forests spread across continents, creating vast tropical and subtropical environments. These forests provided food and shelter for small, tree-dwelling mammals. Among these were the earliest primates, small, nocturnal creatures with grasping hands, forward-facing eyes, and flexible limbs. Their sensory adaptations made them adept climbers and foragers in dense vegetation. These early primates laid the groundwork for the future evolution of monkeys, apes, and eventually humans. Insectivores and small omnivores scurried across the forest floors, feeding on insects that rebounded quickly after the extinction. Small carnivorous mammals evolved sharper teeth and more agile bodies, hunting other mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. These early carnivores would later give rise to the great predatory lineages of the Cenozoic, including cats, dogs, bears, and hyenas. In the oceans, the extinction had eliminated the dominant marine reptiles. This opened opportunities for mammals to invade aquatic environments. Over millions of years, some mammals evolved into fully marine forms. Early ancestors of whales, known as pachycetids, began as land-dwelling creatures with hooved limbs. They hunted fish along riverbanks and gradually adapted to life in water. Their descendants would develop streamlined bodies, flippers, sonar systems, and other traits that define modern whales. Other mammals evolved to fill grazing and browsing roles on land. During the Paleocene and early Eocene, large herbivores such as pantodonts and euanthotheres appeared. These early ungulates had massive bodies, specialized teeth, and sometimes elaborate skull ornamentation. Though many of these lineages died out, they paved the way for the evolution of modern herbivores like horses, elephants, rhinos, and deer. The Eocene epoch, beginning 56 million years ago, marked a golden age for mammals. Global temperatures rose to some of the highest levels in the Cenozoic, creating lush tropical conditions even near the poles. Forests covered much of the planet, supporting extraordinary mammalian diversity. Primates proliferated in warm, forested regions of Asia, Europe, and North America. Bats evolved the ability to fly, filling nocturnal aerial niches and feeding on insects and fruit. Carnivorous mammals, including early mesonychids and creodonts, roamed the forests and grasslands, hunting other mammals, birds, and reptiles. Some mesonychids became large, wolf-like predators, though they would eventually be replaced by more advanced carnivorans. The emergence of hooved mammals, artiodactyls, and perissodactyls further expanded herbivore diversity. Horses, tapirs, and rhinos represent early perissodactyl lineages, while artiodactyls eventually gave rise to deer, cattle, pigs, camels, and other familiar animals. As mammals diversified, so did birds. Flight gave birds access to new habitats and hunting strategies. Some birds became swift predators, others evolved long legs for ground running, and still others adapted to aquatic environments. The Cenozoic saw the rise of giant flightless birds such as terror birds in South America, which became apex predators in regions where mammals had not yet assumed dominant roles. Throughout the Paleocene and Eocene, Earth's climate remained warm, but gradual cooling trends began. The movement of continents altered ocean currents and atmospheric patterns. The formation of the Drake Passage and the opening of southern ocean pathways would eventually initiate the formation of Antarctic ice sheets. Cooling climates changed vegetation patterns and influenced mammalian evolution, favoring species adapted to seasonal environments. Forest ecosystems began transitioning into more open habitats. Grasslands emerged during the Oligocene and Miocene epochs, providing opportunities for grazing animals. Mammals adapted to these new environments by evolving longer limbs, faster running speeds, and specialized teeth for grinding grass. Predators adapted in turn, evolving powerful jaws, sharp claws, and endurance for long-distance pursuit. Through these transformations, mammals continued to rise, diversify, and dominate. Their intelligence, parental care, flexible bodies, and warm-blooded metabolism allowed them to adapt to shifting climates and ecological challenges. Their ability to exploit new resources and environments made them one of the most successful groups in Earth's history. The extinction of the dinosaurs did not guarantee mammals' success, but it created a world where their evolutionary potential could unfold without competition from giant reptiles. Mammals filled niches that had remained inaccessible during the Mesozoic. They became the caretakers of forests, the grazers of plains, the predators of ecosystems, and the engineers of landscapes. And among these mammals, one lineage would eventually develop exceptional cognitive abilities, advanced social structures, and the capacity for complex communication. These primates, descendants of the tiny creatures that emerged in the early Cenozoic, would evolve into early humans, shaping the future of the planet in ways no other species ever had. But before the rise of humans, Earth would witness another chapter filled with extraordinary creatures, the age of megafauna, where giant mammals dominated continents and shaped ecosystems across the world. After the dinosaurs vanished and mammals began their rise, Earth entered a new era defined by extraordinary diversity and dramatic evolutionary innovation. As climates shifted, continents drifted, and ecosystems transformed, mammals adapted into incredible forms. Many of these new species grew to enormous sizes, becoming the megafauna giant mammals that dominated landscapes from the Pleistocene to earlier epochs of the Cenozoic. It was an age of towering herbivores, fierce predators, and some of the most iconic creatures ever to walk the planet. These giants shaped ecosystems, influenced vegetation, and interacted with early humans in ways that would leave lasting marks on Earth's history. The roots of the megafauna era began tens of millions of years after the dinosaur extinction. During the Oligocene and Miocene epochs, global climates cooled gradually, shaping new habitats. Forests gave way to expanding grasslands, especially in Africa and Eurasia. Open landscapes favored large herbivores and the predators that hunted them. Grazing mammals evolved high-crowned teeth, adapted for tough grasses. Running speed became essential for survival. Predators adapted with long legs, powerful jaws, and sharp claws. One of the earliest giant mammals was Paraceratherium, also known as Indricotherium. Living during the Oligocene, around 34 to 23 million years ago, Paraceratherium was the largest land mammal to ever exist. Standing over 5 meters tall at the shoulder and weighing up to 20 tons, it dwarfed modern elephants. With its long neck and powerful limbs, Paraceratherium browsed high vegetation across Asia's open woodlands. Its massive size protected it from predators, allowing it to roam vast territories in search of plant matter. As grasslands spread during the Miocene epoch, new megafauna emerged. Herds of antelope, horses, rhinos, and camels migrated across plains. Early elephants, including Gomphotheres and mastodons, diversified into numerous species with varied tusk shapes and body sizes. Some evolved shovel-like lower jaws for digging roots. Others developed long, spiraled tusks for display and combat. Predators of the Miocene were equally impressive. The largest terrestrial predator of the time was Amphision, known as the bear dog. Weighing up to 500 kilograms, Amphision combined the powerful build of a bear with the speed and agility of a wolf. Other predators, such as Machairodontine, saber-toothed cats, evolved long, blade-like canine teeth specialized for slashing soft tissue. Although saber-tooths are most famously associated with the later Pleistocene, their lineage began millions of years earlier. As the Pliocene epoch approached around 5 million years ago, climates continued cooling. Glaciations began affecting polar regions. Grasslands expanded further. These environmental changes set the stage for the rise of the Pleistocene megafauna, the animals most commonly associated with the term Ice Age giants. By the Pleistocene, beginning around 2.6 million years ago, massive ice sheets covered large parts of North America, Europe, and Asia. Between glacial cycles, warmer interglacial periods allowed forests and grasslands to recover. This constant environmental fluctuation created a world of diverse habitats, tundras, savannas, woodlands, and steppe ecosystems, each hosting unique megafaunal communities. The woolly mammoth became one of the most iconic species of this era. Adapted to cold climates, mammoths developed thick fur, insulating fat layers, and long curved tusks used for foraging and fighting. Their large size helped conserve heat, and their social behavior resembled modern elephants. Mammoths roamed across northern Eurasia and North America, forming herds and feeding on grasses, shrubs, and bark. Another legendary megafaunal herbivore was the woolly rhinoceros. Covered in dense fur and equipped with 2 long horns, it thrived in cold steppe environments. Its horns were used for defense and possibly for clearing snow to reach vegetation. Similar to mammoths, woolly rhinos played a major ecological role by maintaining grassland habitats through grazing and movement. Giant ground sloths dominated the Americas. Species such as Megatherium and Megalonyx could reach lengths of 6 meters and weigh several tons. They fed on leaves, branches, and shrubs, using their long claws to pull down vegetation. Despite their slow movement, they were formidable due to their size and strength. North America was home to some of the most diverse megafaunal assemblages. American mastodons roamed forests, feeding on twigs and bark. The American lion, larger than modern African lions, hunted across plains and woodlands. The dire wolf, heavier and more robust than today's grey wolf, formed packs to hunt large prey. The giant, short-faced bear, one of the largest carnivorous mammals ever, could stand over 3 meters tall when upright and likely scavenged or hunted opportunistically. In South America, megafaunal diversity flourished as well. Glyptodons, massive relatives of armadillos, were protected by thick, domed shells and spiked tails. Macrauchenia, with its long neck and trunk-like snout, browsed vegetation in open environments. Toxodons and other large herbivores occupied niches similar to modern hippos or rhinos. South America's unique predators included the saber-toothed smilodon, which used its long canines and powerful forelimbs to subdue large prey. Australia's megafauna was distinctive and shaped by its long isolation. Diprotodon, the largest marsupial ever known, resembled a giant wombat and weighed up to 3 tons. Giant kangaroos, some standing over 3 meters tall, hopped across open plains. The marsupial lion, Thylacoleo, was a fierce predator equipped with slicing teeth and strong limbs. Megafauna shaped ecosystems in profound ways. Their feeding habits maintained grasslands, prevented forest overgrowth, and distributed nutrients. Their migrations influenced plant growth and soil fertility. Predators kept herbivore populations in balance, maintaining biodiversity. Without these giants, many ecosystems would have functioned very differently. Yet, despite their success, megafauna faced growing challenges toward the end of the Pleistocene. Climate change intensified as Earth underwent cycles of glacial advance and retreat. Temperatures fluctuated, ice sheets grew and shrank, and habitats shifted. Some species adapted by migrating, others faced shrinking ranges or reduced food supplies. However, climate alone cannot explain the widespread extinction of megafauna across multiple continents. A new factor had entered the picture: humans. As anatomically modern humans spread across Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia, and eventually the Americas, their hunting techniques, tools, and cooperative strategies became increasingly effective. Humans targeted large animals for their meat, hides, bones, and fat. Megafauna, which had evolved without pressure from intelligent tool-using predators, were vulnerable. In many regions, the timing of human arrival corresponds closely with megafaunal extinction. In Australia, most megafauna disappeared soon after humans arrived, around 50,000 years ago. In North America, many species vanished between 13,000 and 11,000 years ago, shortly after humans crossed the Bering Land Bridge. Europe and Siberia experienced similar declines, though some species persisted longer in isolated regions. The extinction of megafauna reshaped ecosystems. Grasslands transformed into forests in some regions as grazing pressure decreased. Predators that relied on large prey declined. Nutrient cycles changed as giant animals no longer transported minerals across landscapes. The disappearance of megafauna marked the end of an evolutionary chapter that had lasted millions of years. Yet, some giants survived into modern times. Elephants, rhinos, and hippos represent the last vestiges of ancient megafaunal lineages. Their ancestors once roamed alongside mammoths and giant sloths. Today, they remain reminders of an age when enormous mammals shaped the world. The age of megafauna was a time of ecological richness, and evolutionary experimentation. It saw the rise of massive herbivores, powerful predators, and unique species adapted to every corner of the planet. It also witnessed the growing influence of humans, whose actions would eventually shape ecosystems more profoundly than any natural force. And as the megafauna declined, another chapter began: the emergence of early humans, whose evolution, migration, and survival would forever alter the course of Earth's history. The rise of humans is one of the most remarkable evolutionary journeys in the history of life on Earth. It spans millions of years, beginning with ancient primates living in lush forests and culminating in a species capable of reshaping the entire planet. The human lineage did not emerge suddenly, nor did it follow a straight path. Instead, it was a complex web of branching species, extinctions, migrations, and adaptations. The evolution of humans is a story of resilience, intelligence, cooperation, and constant transformation. The origins of the human lineage trace back to early primates that evolved around 60 million years ago during the Paleocene and Eocene epochs. These early primates were small, tree-dwelling mammals with grasping hands, forward-facing eyes, and flexible limbs. They fed primarily on fruits, insects, and leaves. Their arboreal lifestyles favored good depth perception, agile movement, and enhanced cognitive abilities. As continents shifted and climates changed, primates diversified. Around 20 to 25 million years ago, during the Miocene, the ancestors of apes evolved in Africa. These early apes, such as proconsul, possessed larger brains than earlier primates, lacked tails, and had more flexible shoulder joints suited for climbing and swinging through trees. Over time, multiple ape lineages emerged, some of which would eventually give rise to gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans, and humans. The direct human lineage split from the common ancestor shared with chimpanzees around 6 to 7 million years ago. The earliest hominins members of the human family began adapting to environments that were changing from dense forests to open savannas due to climate shifts in East Africa. One of the most significant early adaptations was bipedalism, the ability to walk on two legs. Fossils such as Sahelanthropus chadensis, Orrorin tugenensis, and Ardipithecus ramidus show evidence of upright walking. Bipedalism offered several advantages. Walking on two legs freed the hands for carrying objects, gathering food, and eventually using tools. It allowed early hominins to see over tall grasses, spot predators, and navigate open landscapes. It also reduced energy consumption during long-distance travel, a valuable trait for survival in expanding savanna environments. Though early hominins still climbed trees, their skeletal structures show a clear shift toward terrestrial locomotion. By around 4 million years ago, Australopithecines had appeared. Australopithecus afarensis, famously represented by the fossil skeleton Lucy, was one of the best-known species from this period. These hominins were fully bipedal, but retained long arms for climbing. They lived in Africa's woodlands and savannas, feeding on fruits, roots, seeds, and possibly small animals. Their brains were slightly larger than those of chimpanzees, but far smaller than those of modern humans. The next major leap in human evolution involved tool use and increased brain size. Around 2.5 million years ago, the genus Homo emerged. Homo habilis, often called handyman, used simple stone tools to crack open bones, cut meat, and process plant material. These tools marked the beginning of technological evolution, a trait that would become central to human success. With the emergence of Homo erectus around 1 9 million years ago, the human lineage expanded dramatically. Homo erectus possessed a larger brain, more modern body proportions, and advanced tool-making abilities. They crafted Archean hand axes, controlled fire, and became the first hominins to leave Africa. Their migrations carried them into Asia and Europe, where they adapted to diverse climates and environments. Fire allowed them to cook food, providing easier access to nutrients and supporting further brain growth. Homo erectus also exhibited social behaviors that were more advanced than earlier hominins. Evidence suggests cooperative hunting, group living, and possibly care for injured individuals. These behaviors laid the foundation for future human societies built on cooperation and shared knowledge. As time progressed, multiple human species coexisted across the globe. In Africa, species such as Homo heidelbergensis and Homo rhodesiensis emerged, serving as transitional forms between Homo erectus and later humans. In Europe and Western Asia, Homo neanderthalensis, the Neanderthals, evolved. Neanderthals were powerful, intelligent hominins adapted to cold climates. They hunted large animals, created tools, controlled fire, buried their dead, and possibly used symbolic objects. Their brains were as large as, or even larger than those of modern humans. In Asia, another mysterious lineage, the Denisovans, lived and interbred with both Neanderthals and early modern humans. Genetic evidence has revealed Denisovan ancestry in modern populations of Melanesia, Australia, and parts of Southeast Asia, showing that human evolution involved extensive interbreeding among different groups. The emergence of Homo sapiens, anatomically modern humans, occurred around 300,000 years ago in Africa. Early Homo sapiens displayed a combination of advanced cognitive abilities, symbolic thinking, and complex communication. Their tool technologies became more refined, featuring blades, bone points, and artistic expressions. Cave paintings, beads, carvings, and ochre markings indicate the development of culture, spirituality, and abstract thought. Around 70,000 years ago, humans began migrating out of Africa in waves, eventually populating all major continents. This migration was aided by advanced tools, cooperative social structures, and the ability to adapt to a wide range of climates. Humans crossed into the Middle East, traveled through Europe and Asia, reached Australia around 65,000 years ago, and eventually entered the Americas around 15,000 to 20,000 years ago, possibly earlier. As humans expanded, they encountered and interbred with other hominin species. Neanderthals disappeared around 40,000 years ago, likely due to a combination of climate change, competition, and assimilation into human populations. Denisovans also vanished, leaving only traces of their DNA behind. By the end of the Pleistocene, Homo sapiens were the last surviving human species. The evolution of language played a critical role in human success. Complex vocal communication allowed early humans to share knowledge, coordinate hunts, transmit culture, and build social bonds. Language enabled humans to develop stories, myths, and teachings passed across generations, a unique advantage that shaped every aspect of human societies. The development of advanced tools, clothing, shelters, and hunting strategies allowed humans to thrive in diverse environments, from tropical forests to Arctic tundra. Fire provided warmth, protection, and the ability to cook food. Symbolic thinking allowed for art, religion, and cultural identity. Cooperation enabled large groups to work together in ways no other species could match. As the Ice Age waned and climates warmed, humans transitioned from nomadic hunter-gatherers to early farmers. This shift, known as the agricultural revolution around 10,000 years ago, transformed human society. The domestication of plants and animals allowed for permanent settlements, population growth, and the development of civilizations. But agriculture came much later. The core of the human evolutionary story lies in millions of years of adaptation, cooperation, and innovation. From small, tree-dwelling primates to tool-using hunter-gatherers, the journey of the human lineage shows how evolution shaped a species capable of reshaping the world. The rise of humans marked the beginning of a new era in Earth's history, one where culture, technology, and intelligence became powerful evolutionary forces. And as humans spread across continents, they began reshaping ecosystems, influencing climates, and altering the fate of countless species. The next chapter unfolds with the global migrations of humans and the profound ways they transformed the Earth they inherited. After millions of years of evolution, adaptation, and survival, early Homo sapiens stood ready to expand far beyond their African homeland. Their intelligence, social cooperation, tool-making skills, and adaptability allowed them to thrive in environments that no other hominin species had ever conquered. The spread of humans across the planet was not a single migration, but a series of waves, each shaped by climate shifts, ecological opportunities, and innovations in technology and culture. This global expansion transformed both humanity and the natural world, setting the stage for the civilizations that would follow. The origins of modern humans trace back to Africa around 300,000 years ago. The oldest known fossils of Homo sapiens show a blend of archaic and modern features, rounded skulls, reduced brow ridges, and more delicate skeletons compared to earlier hominins. Early humans lived as hunter-gatherers, moving in small groups, using stone tools, controlling fire, and exploiting a wide range of foods. Their lives depended on cooperation, communication, and shared knowledge passed down through generations. As climates shifted during the late Pleistocene, Africa experienced cycles of wet and dry periods. During wetter phases, lakes expanded, vegetation flourished, and animal populations grew. During drier phases, resources became scarce, prompting human groups to move in search of better conditions. Around 100,000 to 70,000 years ago, the first significant migrations out of Africa began. These early migrations carried humans into the Arabian Peninsula, where fossil evidence shows their presence during periods when deserts were transformed into grasslands fed by monsoons. Some of these early groups likely died out or retreated due to harsh climatic cycles. But around 70,000 years ago, a major wave of migration began, one that would eventually populate the entire world. From Africa, humans crossed the Sinai Peninsula and moved into the Levant. There, they encountered Neanderthals, who had long inhabited Europe and Western Asia. Interactions between the two species included competition, cultural exchange, and interbreeding. Traces of Neanderthal DNA persist in nearly all non-African human populations today, reflecting this ancient contact. As humans expanded further across Asia, they encountered and interbred with another archaic group, the Denisovans. Though fossil evidence of Denisovans is scarce, genetic traces reveal that they contributed to the ancestry of modern populations in Melanesia, Australia, and parts of Southeast Asia. This genetic legacy highlights the interconnected nature of human evolution during global migration. Reaching South Asia, humans adapted to monsoon climates, tropical forests, and coastal environments. Coastal migration routes may have allowed early humans to access abundant seafood and travel rapidly along shorelines. Archaeological sites along the Indian Ocean suggest that humans arrived in Southeast Asia and Australia surprisingly early, potentially by 65,000 years ago. In Australia, humans encountered unique megafauna giant kangaroos, diprotodon, marsupial lions, and enormous birds. Armed with fire, cooperative hunting strategies, and knowledge of their new environment, humans thrived. Some megafaunal extinctions in Australia coincide with the arrival of humans, suggesting that hunting, habitat modification, or both played significant roles. Meanwhile, other groups of humans traveled north across Asia's vast grasslands. They hunted mammoths, woolly rhinos, horses, and bison. They developed sophisticated tools for cold weather survival, tailored clothing, shelters, fire pits, and weapons adapted for large prey. These humans evolved cultural traditions that helped communities survive in harsh climates. As Ice Age glaciers expanded, sea levels fell dramatically. This exposed land bridges, including the Bering Land Bridge connecting Siberia to Alaska. Between 20,000 and 15,000 years ago, humans crossed from Asia into the Americas. Once there, they expanded rapidly, following animal migrations and exploring new territories. By 13,000 years ago, humans had reached the southern tip of South America, marking one of the fastest large-scale migrations in prehistory. In the Americas, humans encountered an extraordinary array of megafauna, mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats, and enormous bears. Armed with increasingly advanced projectile weapons and coordinated hunting strategies, human groups adapted quickly to the diverse environments of the Americas, from icy tundras to deserts, forests, and tropical climates. As in Australia, many megafaunal extinctions coincide with human arrival, though climate change also played a role. In Europe, humans arrived around 45,000 years ago. They entered landscapes dominated by Neanderthals and cold-adapted megafauna. Europe's harsh climates during the last glacial period challenged early humans, but they adapted with complex tools, tailored clothing, art, and symbolic behavior. Cave paintings in sites such as Lascaux and Chauvet reveal early humans' deep connection to their environment and their emerging capacity for artistic expression. As modern humans spread across the globe, they interacted with and ultimately replaced other hominin species. Neanderthals disappeared around 40,000 years ago. Denisovans vanished even earlier. Other archaic humans, such as Homo floresiensis and Homo luzonensis, persisted in Southeast Asia but eventually went extinct as well. Multiple factors contributed to their disappearance: competition for resources, inability to adapt to climatic fluctuations, interbreeding with modern humans, and possibly diseases. What set Homo sapiens apart was not just physical capability, but cultural and cognitive innovation. Humans developed language systems that allowed precise communication of ideas, strategies, emotions, and instructions. Symbolic thought gave rise to rituals, art, shared beliefs, and complex social structures. Cooperation expanded from small family units to large tribal networks. Humans learned to plan long-term, store food, trade materials, and create alliances. As populations grew and communities settled, social structures became more sophisticated. Humans created tools with increasing specialization: blades, spear throwers, fishing implements, needles for sewing, clothing, and ornaments for symbolic purposes. These tools reflected advanced cognition and cultural transmission. Knowledge accumulated over generations, each group building upon the achievements of those before them. Environmental changes also shaped human migrations. As the last ice age began to wane around 15,000 years ago, melting glaciers caused sea levels to rise. The Bering Land Bridge flooded, isolating the Americas. Rising seas reshaped coastlines across the world. Warming climates allowed forests to expand into previously frozen regions. Humans moved into these newly habitable areas, establishing populations in northern Europe, Siberia, and the Arctic. In the Arctic, humans developed specialized adaptations to survive extreme cold. The ancestors of the Inuit built insulated shelters, crafted sophisticated hunting tools, and developed clothing from animal skins. These adaptations allowed them to thrive in environments where few other humans had settled. As humans spread, they also shaped ecosystems, controlled burning practices, influenced plant growth and animal distribution. Hunting reduced populations of large animals. The arrival of humans on isolated islands often triggered rapid extinctions of species unaccustomed to predation. Through these interactions, humans became a major ecological force long before the rise of agriculture or civilization. After tens of thousands of years of global migration, humans were present on every continent except Antarctica. Each population developed unique cultures, languages, diets, and technologies adapted to their environments. These cultural innovations allowed humans to thrive in deserts, rainforests, mountains, savannas, tundras, and islands, something no other species on Earth had achieved. The global spread of humans set the foundation for the next major transformation in human history: the transition from hunting and gathering to agriculture. As climates warmed and plant distribution shifted, humans discovered that seeds planted in fertile soil could be cultivated into stable food supplies. Animals could be domesticated for labor, milk, and meat. This shift would give rise to permanent settlements, population growth, societal complexity, and, ultimately, civilizations. But long before cities and kingdoms emerged, it was the worldwide migration of humans, their adaptability, innovation, and cooperation that established their place as the dominant species on Earth. Their journey across continents shaped the natural world, influenced the fate of other species, and laid the groundwork for the remarkable cultural and technological developments that followed. The story continues with the dawn of agriculture and the rise of human civilization, a turning point that would transform both humans and the planet forever. For more than 95% of human existence, our ancestors lived as hunter-gatherers, moving across landscapes, following animal migrations, gathering plants, and adapting to the rhythms of nature. But around 12,000 years ago, a monumental transformation occurred. Humans began to shift from nomadic lifestyles to settled communities, from foraging to farming, from simple tools to organized societies. This transition marked the dawn of agriculture and the birth of civilization. It was one of the most profound turning points in the history of Earth and humanity. The roots of agriculture lie in the end of the last ice age. Around 15,000 to 12,000 years ago, global climates warmed, glaciers retreated, and rainfall patterns shifted. New plants spread into previously frozen or barren regions. Wild cereals, such as wheat and barley, flourished in parts of the Middle East. Large herds of megafauna dwindled, making hunting less reliable. Humans, already highly adaptable and observant, began experimenting with gathering and storing seeds. Over generations, humans learned that seeds dropped near their camps sprouted into new plants. They began intentionally planting seeds, clearing land, irrigating soil, and protecting growing plants from pests. This early experimentation evolved into systematic farming. the Fertile Crescent, stretching across modern Iraq, Syria, Turkey, and Iran, became one of the first centers of agricultural development. Here, humans domesticated wheat, barley, lentils, peas, sheep, goats, and cattle. Farming offered a more stable and predictable food supply compared to hunting and gathering. For the first time, humans could produce surplus food, more than they immediately needed. This surplus allowed populations to grow, settlements to expand, and people to specialize in tasks beyond food production. While hunter-gatherers typically lived in small bands of 20 to 50 people, early farming villages grew to hundreds and eventually thousands of inhabitants. Agriculture also developed independently in other parts of the world. In China, early farmers cultivated rice and millet. In New Guinea, people grew taro, yams, and bananas. In Africa, sorghum, millet, and teff were domesticated in the Americas. Indigenous peoples domesticated maize, beans, squash, potatoes, and quinoa. Each region contributed unique crops that shaped the diets and cultures of future civilizations. As food production increased, human societies transformed in every dimension. Permanent homes replaced temporary shelters, and villages became towns. Tasks became specialized. Farmers planted, shepherds herded, potters made vessels, weavers produced cloth, and toolmakers crafted improved tools. Trade networks emerged as communities exchanged goods and knowledge. Pottery allowed for food storage. Textiles allowed protection from harsh climates. New technologies spread rapidly between groups. With rising populations came new social structures. Leadership roles developed elders, chiefs, or councils that organized communal efforts such as irrigation, defense, and ceremonies. Inequality also emerged as some individuals accumulated more land, livestock, or tools than others. The foundations of social hierarchies, something rare among hunter-gatherers, began to take shape. The development of irrigation systems marked a major advancement in regions such as Mesopotamia and Egypt. Humans built canals, dams, and reservoirs to control water flow. This allowed farming in areas with limited rainfall. Irrigation supported larger populations and increased agricultural output. These innovations allowed for the rise of cities, centralized governments, and complex societies. Around 6,000 years ago, the world's first cities emerged. In Mesopotamia, Uruk became one of the earliest major urban centers. It housed tens of thousands of people, monumental architecture, temples, and administrative buildings. Writing systems began to appear first as records of trade and agricultural production, then evolving into complex scripts capable of expressing language, history, and mythology. The earliest known writing, cuneiform, emerged in Mesopotamia around 5,000 years ago. Civilization expanded across various regions. In Egypt, the Nile River supported a powerful kingdom known for monumental pyramids, art, and a sophisticated writing system. The Nile's predictable flooding cycle provided fertile soil that sustained abundant food production. In the Indus Valley, cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa flourished, showcasing advanced urban planning, drainage systems, and trade networks. In China, early dynasties developed writing, bronze technologies, and complex social structures. In the Americas, civilizations arose independently. The Olmec, Maya, Aztec, and Inca built cities, created intricate calendars, developed writing systems, and engineered monumental architecture. Maize agriculture supported large populations. while terraced farming in the Andes transformed mountainous landscapes into productive agricultural zones. Farming also reshaped human relationships with the environment. Forests were cleared for fields, rivers were controlled with canals, animals were domesticated, altering ecosystems and evolutionary paths. Dogs, the earliest domesticated animals, helped humans hunt and protect settlements. Cattle, sheep, goats, and pigs became vital sources of food, labor, and materials. However, domestication also brought zoonotic diseases, pathogens that spread from animals to humans, influencing human immunity and population health. As societies grew more complex, conflicts arose over land, water, and resources. Warfare became more organized, with armies, fortifications, and weapons. Metallurgy first, copper, then bronze, and later iron advanced toolmaking and weaponry. Trade networks connected distant civilizations, carrying goods such as spices, textiles, metals, and precious stones across continents. Cultural exchange spread ideas, technologies, religions, and artistic traditions. Religion became a central part of early civilizations. Societies developed pantheons of gods, representing natural forces, fertility, war, and harvests. Temples became centers of cultural and political power. Rituals, ceremonies, and myths helped unify communities and reinforce social order. Writing allowed humans to record laws, stories, scientific observations, and administrative details. It enabled the preservation and transmission of knowledge across generations. Literature, mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy emerged as intellectual traditions. Civilizations built astronomical monuments to track the movement of stars and planets, allowing them to create calendars that guided farming cycles. The agricultural revolution did not come without challenges. Dependence on farming made communities vulnerable to droughts, floods, pests, and soil depletion. Crowded settlements increased the spread of disease. Social inequality and labor demands led to hierarchical societies with elites and laborers. Environmental transformations, such as deforestation and soil erosion, had long-term consequences. Yet, agriculture fundamentally reshaped human destiny. It allowed for population growth, technological innovation, artistic expression, and political organization. It laid the foundation for nations, trade networks, scientific advancements, and cultural achievements. The dawn of civilization marked humanity's transition from surviving within nature to actively shaping the environment. As cities grew and empires formed, humans entered a new era, characterized by monumental achievements, the construction of pyramids, ziggurats, roads, irrigation systems, and complex governments. Human societies became increasingly interconnected. Knowledge expanded through writing, trade, and shared culture. The dawn of civilization set humanity on a path that would alter the planet itself. Agriculture transformed landscapes. Urbanization concentrated populations. Technological innovations accelerated. These changes laid the groundwork for the modern world, where human activity would become a dominant force shaping Earth's climate, ecosystems, and future. The next chapter explores how civilizations expanded, innovated, and influenced the natural world, and how their growth eventually led to the interconnected global society we know today. As human civilization expanded across the world, it transformed landscapes, altered climates, and reshaped ecosystems in ways no other species had ever achieved. From the earliest agricultural societies to the rise of empires and global trade networks, humans became a geological and ecological force capable of changing the course of evolution itself. The shaping of modern ecosystems is a story of innovation, adaptation, and unintended consequences, a story that continues unfolding today. After the agricultural revolution and the formation of early civilizations, human populations grew steadily. Forests were cleared for farmland. Rivers were dammed and diverted. Grazing animals transformed grasslands. Farming terraces sculpted mountainsides. Each technological advancement increased humanity's ability to modify the environment. By 5,000 years ago, civilizations in Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, and China were already altering ecosystems on a large scale. Irrigation networks supported vast fields of crops. Domesticated animals grazed across continents. Cities grew into dense population centers that consumed immense amounts of resources. These early modifications marked the beginning of anthropogenic change, human-driven transformation of ecosystems. As populations grew and societies advanced, humans began spreading species far beyond their native ranges. Crops such as wheat, barley, and rice moved with migrating farmers. Domesticated animals like cattle, horses, and sheep followed human expansion. These species reshaped local ecosystems, often outcompeting native plants and animals. In ancient Egypt, the Nile River was carefully managed to control floods and support agriculture. This stewardship allowed Egyptian civilization to flourish for thousands of years. Yet even there, soil salinization and shifting river channels eventually strained ecosystems. In Mesopotamia, irrigation intensified soil degradation, turning once fertile landscapes into deserts over centuries. The rise of empires increased ecosystem changes. Rome, Greece, Persia, and China cut down forests for timber, farmland, and shipbuilding. Deforestation led to soil erosion, loss of wildlife, altered rainfall patterns, and reduced biodiversity. Vast road networks connected regions, enabling trade but also facilitating the spread of invasive species, diseases, and pests. As civilizations interacted through trade routes such as the Silk Road, species and technologies spread between continents. Rice from China reached Southeast Asia and India. Citrus fruits traveled from East Asia to the Mediterranean. Horses spread across Asia and Europe, transforming transportation and warfare. Each exchange influenced ecosystems by introducing new biological players. By the medieval era, human populations continued to rise, and innovations in farming increased productivity. The invention of the heavy plough, crop rotation, and improved irrigation allowed more land to be cultivated. Forests and wetlands were drained to create farmland. Though these innovations supported larger populations, they reduced natural habitats and weakened ecosystems. The discovery of new continents by European explorers in the late 15th century accelerated global ecological change. The Columbian Exchange, the movement of plants, animals, people, and diseases between the old and new worlds, reshaped ecosystems across the globe. Crops like maize, potatoes, and tomatoes spread from the Americas to Europe, Africa, and Asia, dramatically increasing food security and population growth. In return, Europeans brought wheat, sugarcane, coffee, and livestock to the Americas, transforming landscapes. Cattle, horses, pigs, sheep, and goats multiplied rapidly, displacing native species and altering ecosystems. Alongside this exchange came diseases such as smallpox, measles, and influenza. These pathogens devastated indigenous populations in the Americas, leading to massive demographic shifts that further altered the ecological balance. Abandoned farmlands reverted to forests in some regions, while plantations and colonial agriculture replaced ecosystems in others. The Industrial Revolution, beginning in the 18th century, marked a dramatic acceleration of human influence over the natural world. Coal, steam engines, and mechanization allowed humans to mine deeper, build larger cities, and produce goods on unprecedented scales. Fossil fuel combustion released large amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, initiating long-term changes to Earth's climate. Industrial agriculture, powered by machinery and later by chemical fertilizers and pesticides, significantly increased food production but reduced biodiversity. Vast monocultures replaced diverse agricultural landscapes. Rivers were diverted, wetlands drained, and grasslands plowed. Habitats fragmented into isolated patches, threatening countless species. As cities grew, urban ecosystems emerged. Wildlife adapted to human environments. Pigeons, rats, foxes, and crows thrived in streets and parks. Industrial pollution contaminated air, soil, and water. Forests in Europe and North America shrank dramatically during industrial expansion, though some later recovered due to conservation efforts and economic shifts. The invention of railways and steamships connected distant parts of the world, accelerating the spread of invasive species. Rats stowed away on ships, rabbits overran Australia, and kudzu vines smothered landscapes in the southern United States. These species, freed from natural predators, reshaped ecosystems in ways often irreversible. The 20th century intensified human influence more than any previous era. World population grew from 1.6 billion in 1900 to over 8 billion by the 21st century. Technological innovations advanced at a pace faster than ecosystems could adapt. Cars, electricity, synthetic chemicals, plastics, fertilizers, and global trade revolutionized human life but strained the natural world. Pollution became a major ecological threat. Chemicals like DDT disrupted food webs by harming predatory birds. Plastic waste accumulated in oceans, forming massive floating debris fields and entering the diets of marine animals. Oil spills devastated coastlines and aquatic ecosystems. Deforestation accelerated in tropical regions such as the Amazon, Southeast Asia, and Central Africa. Forests were cleared for agriculture, timber, and livestock grazing. The loss of rainforests, among the most biodiverse ecosystems on Earth, reduced carbon storage and contributed to climate change. Climate change itself emerged as one of the most critical consequences of industrialization. Rising greenhouse gas levels warmed the planet, altered weather patterns, melted polar ice, and raised sea levels. Coral reefs suffered bleaching due to warming oceans. Species struggled to adapt as their habitats shifted or disappeared. Yet alongside destruction came new forms of conservation. By the mid-20th century, scientists and environmentalists recognized the need to protect ecosystems. National parks, wildlife reserves, and environmental laws emerged. Species such as the American bison, the bald eagle, and the California condor were saved from extinction through concerted efforts. International treaties aim to protect endangered species, reduce pollution, and combat climate change. Modern ecosystems reflect a blend of natural processes and human influence. Forests regrew in parts of Europe and North America where agriculture declined. Some species adapted remarkably well to urban environments. Wetlands restored by conservation projects provided habitat for birds and aquatic life. Rewilding initiatives reintroduced wolves, lynx, and bison to regions where they had vanished. Yet challenges remain immense. Many species continue to face extinction due to habitat loss, poaching, pollution, and climate change. Coral reefs decline at alarming rates. Insects essential for pollination are decreasing. The melting of ice sheets threatens coastal ecosystems worldwide. Human activity has become the dominant force driving ecological change, so dominant that many scientists refer to the current era as the Anthropocene. This proposed geological epoch reflects the profound imprint humans have left on Earth's atmosphere, geology, and biosphere. Modern ecosystems are no longer shaped solely by natural forces, but by the actions, decisions, and technologies of one species. The story of Earth has entered a chapter where humans hold the power to either restore ecological balance or push ecosystems toward further collapse. The next outline explores the future, the potential paths for Earth's ecosystems, the role of humans in shaping them, and the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. The story of Earth spans more than 4.5 billion years, a tale of creation, transformation, extinction, and renewal. From molten beginnings to oceans teeming with life, from towering dinosaurs to the rise of humans, the planet has endured constant change. Now, as Earth enters a new chapter shaped heavily by human influence, the future of the planet stands at a crossroads. What lies ahead depends not only on natural processes, but on the decisions, actions, and technologies of a single species, humanity. To glimpse Earth's future, we must first understand the forces currently shaping the planet. Human activity has altered atmospheric chemistry, changed land use patterns, driven species extinctions, and warmed the global climate. Carbon dioxide levels are higher today than at any point in the last several million years. Glaciers and ice sheets are melting at accelerating rates. Sea levels are rising, threatening coastal cities and ecosystems. Extreme weather events, heat waves, storms, floods, and droughts are becoming more frequent. The next century will be defined by how humans respond to these changes. If emissions continue unchecked, global temperatures may rise several degrees, pushing ecosystems beyond their resilience limits. Coral reefs may vanish entirely in a warmer, more acidic ocean. Tropical forests may dry and burn, releasing stored carbon and accelerating warming. Species struggling to adapt may face extinction. Humans themselves will confront challenges related to food security, water availability, disease, and displacement. However, the future is not predetermined. Humans possess the intelligence and technology to alter this trajectory. Renewable energy systems, solar, wind, hydroelectric, geothermal, are becoming more efficient and widespread. Advances in battery storage, grid technology, and electric transportation offer pathways to drastically reduce emissions. Innovations in carbon capture, climate engineering, and sustainable agriculture hold potential to restore ecological balance. In the coming centuries, humanity may enter an era of ecological restoration. Forests regrown, rivers rehabilitated, extinct species revived through genetic techniques, and ecosystems preserved through global cooperation. The success of such efforts depends on long-term commitment and international collaboration. Future generations may look back on this moment as the turning point when humans chose to protect and sustain the planet rather than exhaust it. Beyond climate and ecosystems, Earth's future includes geological processes that unfold over thousands to millions of years. Tectonic plates will continue to drift. Africa will collide with Europe, closing the Mediterranean Sea and forming new mountain ranges. Australia will move northward, eventually merging with Asia. California will shift along the San Andreas Fault, altering coastlines over vast timescales. These slow but powerful forces will reshape continents just as they have throughout Earth's history. Over the next 50,000 years, Earth's orbit and axial tilt will shift naturally, influencing climate cycles. Future ice ages may be delayed or altered due to human-caused warming. If greenhouse gas concentrations remain high, the planet may avoid glaciation for hundreds of thousands of years. Ecosystems will continue to adapt to changing climates, creating new biomes and species while others decline. In 1 million years, many species alive today will either be extinct or evolved into new forms. Humanity itself may change biologically or technologically. Cybernetic enhancements, genetic engineering, and artificial intelligence could transform human evolution, creating beings that differ dramatically from present-day humans. Such transformations could influence how future humans interact with Earth's ecosystems. In 10 million years, continents will have moved significantly. The Atlantic Ocean will widen, pushing the Americas farther from Europe and Africa. New mountain ranges may emerge, oceans may shift, and climate zones may reorganize. Species evolution will produce entirely new ecosystems, shaped by both natural selection and the residual influences of human activity. In 50 million years, the outlines of modern continents may be unrecognizable. Africa may fuse with Europe and Asia, forming massive supercontinents. New oceans may open. Biodiversity will flourish in ways impossible to predict as evolution fills ecological niches created by millions of years of change. New predators, herbivores, plants, and marine creatures will dominate landscapes, just as dinosaurs and megafauna once did. In 250 million years, Earth may once again form a supercontinent as tectonic plates converge. Scientists predict several potential configurations. One possibility is Pangaea Ultima, a supercontinent where most landmasses join near the equator. Such a configuration would drastically alter global climate, potentially creating vast deserts in the interior and intense monsoons around coastal regions. Life on such a supercontinent would evolve adaptations suited for extreme climates. In 500 million years, the sun will have grown brighter, increasing its energy output and warming Earth's surface. Higher temperatures may challenge the survival of complex life. Oceans may evaporate slowly, and the planet's climate may shift toward conditions that resemble early Venus. Long before the sun reaches its red giant phase, Earth may become uninhabitable for many organisms. In 1 billion years, rising solar output may cause Earth's oceans to evaporate completely. Without oceans, weathering cycles and atmospheric processes will collapse, stripping the planet of its ability to regulate climate. Life, if it still exists, will be limited to hardy microorganisms that can survive in extreme environments. In 4 to 5 billion years, the Sun will expand into a red giant, engulfing Mercury and Venus and possibly reaching Earth's orbit. Even if Earth is not consumed, its surface will be scorched and all remaining life will be extinguished. The planet may eventually be pushed outward or spiral inward, depending on complex gravitational interactions. Beyond the destruction of Earth as a habitable world, the matter that makes up our planet will continue its cosmic journey. When the Sun eventually collapses into a white dwarf, the remnants of Earth, its atoms, minerals, and elements may drift into space, becoming part of interstellar dust that seeds new stars and planets. Just as Earth formed from the debris of earlier stars, future worlds may form from the remains of our own. But despite these distant cosmic fates, the story of Earth's immediate future remains unwritten. Humanity holds unprecedented power to influence the next chapter, to preserve biodiversity, stabilize climate systems, and repair ecological damage, or to push the planet toward further instability. The choices humans make now will echo for thousands, millions, or even billions of years. The future of Earth is a blend of natural forces and human decisions. It spans from the next storm season to the next ice age, from continental drift to the sun's eventual expansion. And though the planet will continue evolving long after humans are gone, the present moment represents a unique intersection where one species can consciously shape the fate of an entire world. Earth's story is not yet finished. Its future will unfold through cycles of change, destruction, creation, and renewal, just as it has for billions of years. And within that future lies the legacy of humanity, a species capable of both great harm and extraordinary preservation.